The butterfly pull is one of, if not the most powerful movements in swimming. When done well, it creates a lot of speed in not a lot of time. However, it's a skill that a lot of swimmers really struggle to develop, and if they don't develop this skill, it becomes very difficult to swim both fast and effective butterfly. In this video, I'm going to show you how it's done. Hi everyone, Andrew here, helping you help your swimmers get faster. The butterfly pull is a key aspect of the butterfly stroke. We're going to go over why it's so important, what swimmers need to do in order to execute a great one, as well as some of the challenges that come with improving the pull. Once we understand those challenges, we can go about trying to find solutions, and we're going to go through some solutions that can be really effective for helping your swimmers learn this skill so that they can go faster. Finally, we'll wrap it up with some sets that you can use either right away or for inspiration as to how to improve these skills. Why does it matter? Why is the pull so important? Well, it's the fastest point swimmers move on the surface of the water in any stroke. Although only for an instant, when done well, they can achieve faster speeds than when swimming freestyle. So it's a huge opportunity to create a lot of speed. And it's important to create that speed because it helps to generate the hand speed to make it through the double arm recovery, and it helps generate the body speed needed to make it through the recovery as well. So if the hands aren't moving fast enough, at the end of the pull, it can be really difficult to get them up and around over the surface of the water. And if swimmers aren't going fast enough at the end of the pull, because there's not a lot of propulsion during the arm recovery, in fact, there's more or less none, swimmers are going to slow down. So if they're not going fast enough, they're going to slow down too much, and that's really going to disrupt the rhythm of the stroke. So they have to have a powerful pull so they can get into the next stroke as effectively as possible. Lastly, because there's a little bit of a downward component to the fly pull, it helps the body come up out of the water, which is critical for helping the arms recover over the water. So because of the challenges of the arm recovery, the pull needs to be really, really good in order to carry the swimmer through the recovery so they can get back to the pull and do it all again. So what are the key characteristics of a really great pull? There's three things that swimmers need to execute well. First, they need to have a big surface area to pull with, so they're using the forearms and the hands to move water backwards with. They need to have a large range of motion with their pull, and more importantly, a large effective range of motion. So if they get in a really great position in the beginning of the stroke, and then they lose it halfway, that's not going to be nearly as effective as if they hold a great position throughout the whole stroke, or if they set up the stroke really poorly, and then during the second half of the pull, they finally get into a good position. That's not going to be great either because they're missing out on a lot of the pull. The third key element is that they have to accelerate the hands. And so hand speed and forearm speed needs to build throughout the stroke. If they don't do that, it's going to be really, really, really difficult to get the arms over the water and recover for the next cycle. Not only that, they simply won't generate the body speed that they need in order to go fast. And to have a really great pull, the lats, the big muscles on the side of the body, they're going to be the ones that are responsible for really pulling the arms back and accelerating them. So swimmers have to figure out how to use those muscles and use them effectively. When it comes to priority, which one is most important? Well, there's not a good answer to that because they all really have to be there. They all are critically important. And if one of these key skills is missing, swimmers are really going to miss out on the amount of propulsion they can create and the amount of speed that they're going to be able to generate. So they have to do all three. They've got to set it up, they've got to hold those positions, and they've got to accelerate throughout the pull. If they can do that, they're going to be set. Now, if we take a look at this swimmer here, what we'll see is at the beginning of the pull, he's going to get into a good position here. So you can see that the hands and the forearms are starting to orient backwards, and that's going to create that surface area that he needs to move a lot of water backwards. And now, he's in that position. He's in that position pretty early in the stroke. His elbows and his hands are well in front of the body when he's doing that. And now he's going to pull back. And as you can see, the forearm and the hands stay facing backwards, even all the way back here for as long as possible. And that's going to create a large range of motion where he's holding a really effective position. So from the beginning here, setting it up, holding it, holding it, holding it, holding it, holding it, holding it all the way through the back of the stroke. So really great position here to start, and then pulling straight back and holding that position throughout the entire pull. Now the last aspect of it too is the acceleration. So patience, and then boom, you can see the hand speed pick up the back of the stroke. So patience setting it up, and then right about there, that's where he starts to let it rip, and he really builds throughout each pull. The hand speed increases. So great setup, holds those positions, and then there, accelerating through the pull. Again, It's not super complicated. It might not be easy for swimmers to do, but they just have to set things up, hold them throughout, and really accelerate in order to create a really powerful pull, create a lot of propulsion, and create a lot of speed. We'll watch another swimmer from a different angle here, and what you can see is setting things up, getting the hands deep, using the whole forearms, and then really pulling back. And you can see, especially at the end, there's going to be that acceleration right there where she lets it rip. So patience, and then boom, there's the acceleration, patience, and then the acceleration. And that's a key aspect of the pull, is learning how to set things up and then be really aggressive once they're set up to create a lot of propulsion and really accelerate the limbs. So really getting on top of it, the arms are facing backwards and then pulling back and then holding those positions while accelerating the arms throughout the stroke. Really key skills, really important for an effective pull. So we've talked about why having an effective pull is really important. We've discussed what swimmers need to do to make that happen, and we've shown a couple examples of what it looks like in action. So why don't all swimmers execute these great skills? It seems pretty straightforward, yet many struggle to execute it at a high level. So what's the challenge? The first challenge is that without rotation of the body, the range of motion in the shoulders is going to be limited, and so it's difficult to get into really good positions. So if I'm facing here and I just turn a little bit, it's easy to get into a really great position. But now when I'm facing forwards, it's much more difficult to get into those really good positions because the shoulders simply don't have the range of motion. That's one of the benefits of rotating, is it's easier to get into a great position with the arm facing backwards. It's harder when swimmers are flat to the water. So it's going to be more difficult to execute these skills for any swimmer, and those that are compromised in the range of motion of the shoulders, it's going to be even more difficult. Another challenge is that an effective pull is a really long pull. They've got to hold a ton of water from all the way up top, all the way down to the bottom of the stroke. And it can't just be that they go through the motions and they execute the right positions. The pull itself has to get better as it goes. It needs to accelerate. So they have to hold great positions the whole way through, and they have to accelerate through those positions the whole way through as well. Not only do they have to be good, they have to be good for a pretty extended period of time. And not only do they have to be good, they have to actually get better as they go. And so that can be really difficult for a lot of swimmers to do. They might be able to get in the right position for just a split second, but that's not sufficient. They've got to be able to hold it. The next challenge is that butterfly is a pretty ballistic stroke relative to the other strokes. You can't really do butterfly slow, and you can't practice butterfly slow. So while in freestyle, you can be really patient with the arm recoveries, you can be really patient with setting up the stroke, and you can be really patient with building through the pull. None of that really applies in butterfly. The arms get swung over the water, and if you don't swing them over the water, they're not getting around all the way to the front of the body. Likewise, if you pause in the front of the stroke, you wait for it, you lose all your momentum, you lose the body position, and swimmers are not going to be able to get that back. They have a split second to move into the next aspect of the stroke. Same with the pull. Once it starts, they can't slow it down, they can't take their time, because that pull, like we talked about earlier, needs to be really powerful to get the arms over the water, to get the body up in the water, and to generate the speed to carry them through the arm recovery. So it can't be done slow. So because it has to be done fast, because they don't have time between different segments of the stroke, it's really hard to think their way through the stroke because they simply don't have time. And if they try to slow it down to figure out what to do, they're just going to mess the whole thing up, and it's really not going to work. So that's a challenge we have to overcome as well. Last, no pull is exactly the same. Swimmers are different. Different body lengths, different ranges of motion in the shoulders, different amount of strength in the upper body, different bone lengths. They come in different shapes and sizes, and as a result, there's not going to be a perfect pull we want them to execute. It's going to be different for every swimmer, so it's difficult to know exactly how a swimmer should pull. To make things a little bit more complicated, event demands can change as well. And so if you look at 200 butterflyers as compared to 100 butterflyers, especially 50 butterflyers, you tend to see slightly different strategies in terms of what they do with their arms. So swimmers might have to make adjustments slightly based upon the events that they're swimming, and that presents a new challenge because we have to equip swimmers with the ability to do so rather than just expect them to figure it out. So lots of challenges with learning butterfly in general, but in particular the pull, and those are the challenges that we're going to try to solve next. So to help swimmers learn an effective butterfly pull with greater consistency, greater reliability, and more effectiveness, we're going to use several different strategies. We're going to use 3 different drills to put them in position to learn these skills faster and better. Then we're going to go over 3 performance strategies to help them more effectively learn what they need to do in order to create speed. Rather than using one particular strategy, we're going to combine them in different ways, and that's going to give us the best opportunity to help swimmers learn the key skills that they need to improve in order to go fast. First up is wall pull. It's helpful because swimmers can learn how to position the forearm effectively, use that whole arm and set up the stroke, and then create pressure from that position. So sometimes swimmers struggle to even get in those positions to start with, and then sometimes they just focus on the hand rather than using the arm and the hand together in order to create propulsion. So this can be a really effective activity for providing swimmers with great sensory awareness of what they need to do and how to make it happen. Again, the butterfly pull happens really fast, so if we can provide swimmers more time in those key positions and provide them with more awareness of what they're doing, it's going to accelerate their learning. All they're going to do is when they're in the water, they can put their arms on the pool deck and just press down. And so that gets them in that position where they're using the hand and the forearm, and now we're creating pressure into the pool deck. We're squeezing their lats in order to create the right sensation, the right awareness of what they need to do. In terms of implementation, you want to use it as much as necessary. You can use it in between repetitions, you can use it in between sets, and it all helps swimmers feel how to create these positions. And with time and practice, this skill is going to start to show up in their swimming. By alternating between wall pull and swim, you increase the likelihood that this skill is going to show up in their swimming. One of the greatest advantages of wall pull is that it's practical, it's simple, it's easy, and swimmers can't really mess it up. They just have to put themselves in position and apply force down. And so that creates a really powerful tool because you want something that you don't have to spend a lot of time coaching. When using it, you don't need to do 30-second repetitions. 5-second repetitions can make a huge difference. You just want to integrate it into the workouts, into the sets as often as possible. So again, this is a pretty simple exercise. They're just moving slightly up and down, and you don't even have to create movement. You can just have them press and just hold it statically. But they're just experiencing, they're playing with different positions, they're moving it wide, they're moving it narrow, and they're just using the forearm and the hand to press straight down and to really squeeze. And so it doesn't really matter exactly where they put their arms, they're just trying to play with and feel lots of different positions and create pressure with that whole arm straight into the pool deck. Next up is power pulls. And so all they're going to do is they're going to get into a position of a butterfly pull, and then they're just going to pull straight back on the surface of the water and then recover the hands under the water. So it's a super simple focus on moving water backwards. There are no time constraints in that they have all the time in the world to set up the stroke and pull. Unlike regular butterfly, there's no arm recoveries to worry about. There's no undulation. And so this is a progression from wall pull. They're trying to execute the same skill as pressing straight down into the wall using the forearm and the hand. Now they're going to do it while lying on the surface of the water, try to move water backwards so they can move forwards. It works really well with resistance. It works really well with hand postures, such as closing the fist, holding paddles upside down, things like that, and requiring performance, whether stroke count or skill. So it can be really useful for developing both the strength and the skill to move a lot of water backwards in the context of butterfly. One of the effective aspects of this drill is that swimmers can literally see the surge. They can see themselves move forward with each pull. And so that provides a lot of great feedback as to whether they're moving water backwards effectively. So again, super simple, set up the stroke, and then they pull straight back. And so the idea here is we're working on those key skills, big surface area, long range of motion, and really accelerating the limb as they go through. So it's a really simplified version. So for swimmers that are really struggling with creating a lot of propulsion with the arms, it can be a great starting point to help them learn how to pull back effectively, how to set up the stroke, and how to accelerate it through. Next up is one-arm butterfly. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add in the timing and the undulation components to help swimmers feel these key skills and start to integrate the butterfly rhythm into what they're doing. And so it's definitely more specific in terms of the rhythm and the flow of the stroke as compared to the previous two activities. However, we still reduce the force demands of lifting the upper body by recovering one arm over the water. It allows swimmers to slow things down. They don't have to be quite as powerful. They don't have to swing everything across. They can be more patient, so they don't have to get everything right in order to be effective. They can explore a little bit more. So now they can still work on an effective pull, but they can do so in an environment where they have a little bit more control. Just as important, though, is that the rhythm stays the same, the kick timing is the same as regular butterfly, and so they still have to do the right things at the right time. They just can do so with a little bit more patience, and that's going to help them learn more. And again, as with the power pulls, this works really well with resistance, hand postures, and performance, things we're going to talk about shortly, and that helps them develop both the strength and the skill in what they're doing, and that's going to make regular butterfly a lot easier and a lot more effective. So one arm butterfly here, just like regular butterfly, except one arm at a time. I tend to prefer the arm up in the front of the stroke, especially because it tends to tighten the rhythm up a little bit. However, you can do the arm by the side as well. The key idea here is retaining the same rhythm of butterfly, but now spending a little bit more time, being a little bit more effective, and setting up the stroke, holding water all the way through, and really accelerating the limb through to create as much propulsion as possible. So with all the activities we've discussed so far, and including regular full stroke butterfly, resistance can be a really great tool for helping swimmers learn how to move more water with each stroke. They're going to get a better awareness of the key skills they need to execute. It's going to encourage more direct pulling actions, so there's going to be less side-to-side motion, and it's going to be more directly backwards. They're going to be better able to feel the pressure on the forearms and the hands because of the added resistance, and they're going to be better able to feel losses of pressure. Because of the added resistance, if they're pulling through and all of a sudden the hand just kind of slips through, they're going to be able to feel that a lot more with the resistance, because the contrast between holding water and not holding water with the resistance is going to be a lot bigger. So it really helps them feel what they're doing. It also makes it more difficult to achieve the necessary acceleration of the hands. So swimmers are going to have to be a lot more deliberate. They're going to have to be a lot more locked in with their skills, and they're really going to have to pull hard to make it happen. Not only will this improve their skill by using resistance and focusing on the acceleration of the limb, they're going to develop the necessary strength over time. So it will improve their skill and it will improve their strength, and they need both in order to swim fast. To further help swimmers learn how to manipulate the water effectively, we're going to use different hand postures. So what are the benefits? We're going to help them build smarter hands. They're going to be better able to feel what they're doing. The better they can feel the water, the better they can interact with the water, the more they're going to be able to create a lot of propulsion. It also helps them use the forearms more effectively. So if we close the fist, they can't use the hand, so they have to create propulsion with the forearm. Rather than telling them what to do, we can put them in situations where they almost have to figure out what to do. In terms of implementation, it can be really effective to use multiple different hand postures and then cycle through those hand postures so swimmers get exposed to a lot of different ways of interacting with the water. That can really help the learning, help them figure out how to create propulsion in a lot of different contexts. You can also have them contrast, so they go one hand closed, one hand open, and that lets them feel the difference between the two hands at the same time. And the better they can do that, the more effective they're going to be with their butterfly pull. In terms of the context in which you'd use these hand postures, it's important to know that it's a little bit more difficult to use these with full stroke butterfly just because of that continuous rhythm, that continuous aspect of butterfly. Anything that disrupts that rhythm can cause a little bit of problem. So using a lot of postures can be a little bit tough with butterfly. However, you can get past that problem in two ways. One, you can use contrast so that maybe they go one closed fist, one hand open, and that open hand really helps them figure out how to maintain the stroke cycle. Or you can have them use fins, and then the legs help them get through, even though they don't have quite as much power up top in the pull. At the same time, hand postures are really, really good for power pulls and one-arm butterfly, and so you can do a lot of hand posture work there and really help them improve their feel, improve their skills, and then try to take that into the regular butterfly swim. So last strategy is to ask for performance. You can use stroke counts, stroke rates, or speed, and that's going to really challenge them to find more effective ways to move through the water. So you can use the drills and then perform, or you can have them perform during the drills as well. So the first example, they're going to go 425s power pulls. They're just going to do it, feel it out. Then they're going to go 425s butterfly, minimize stroke count and time. Or you can have them actually perform during those drills, the sensory activities as well. So 350s one-arm butterfly with a parachute. They're going to minimize stroke count and time, so they're going to be challenged to execute that drill at a really high level. And then they're going to go into 250s butterfly, minimize stroke count and time. So in the first case, we're helping them feel it, and then they're going to try to translate that into some performance with full stroke butterfly. And then in the second option, we're going to challenge them during the drills themselves, and then ask them to perform during the regular swimming as well. Both can be really effective. As long as you have a reason for using one versus the other, you're good to go. So feel free to experiment with both. So now let's take a look at a few sets to help you understand how to actually implement these ideas. So first up, this is more skill-based than anything else. They're going to go 2 rounds through. They're going to go 425s power pull. Then they're going to go 425s butterfly. So the first 2 pairs, they're going to go 1 less stroke per 25. The next 2, they're going to build each 25 to strong. And then the last 2, they're going to descend those 1 to 4 to strong. On the power pulls, they're always going to be using different hand postures. So on the first round, they're going to go pinch paddles like that. And then on the second round, they're going to go okay hands. The pinch paddles really help them learn how to control the wrist. And the okay hands helps them feel if they're moving the arms side to side. because they'll feel when the water's moving through the hand and then when it's not moving through the hand. Before each repetition, they're going to do 5 seconds of wall pull to really lock in that skill and the feeling of creating pressure. So it's a really effective way to combine all the strategies we've discussed to really help swimmers better feel what they need to do and challenge them to perform in different ways to make it happen. This next set is going to be a little bit more of an endurance focus. They're going to start off with 475s, 51 arm butterfly with closed fist to really help them feel how to use the forearm. Then they're going to go right into a 25 butterfly strong. They're going to descend the first 51 to 4 to strong so that each 75 gets faster overall. We'll go 5 seconds wall pull before each repetition. They're going to do that the whole set. Again, just to help them get a better feel how to create pressure into the water, how to use the forearm to do it. 3-100s is 25 freestyle with closed fist, 25 butterfly. They're trying to minimize stroke count on the freestyle. So they're going to have to use their forearm really well on the freestyle, and they're going to have to be really efficient, minimizing their stroke count. And then they're going to carry that into the butterfly, open the hands up, hopefully feel really good, and be able to better apply effective skills to create a lot of propulsion during that fly. 625s butterfly alternate single closed fist. So now they have to create speed with one hand closed, one hand open. They've got to manage how that feels different from side to side and still minimize stroke count and time and do so on an alternating basis. So it's going to flip-flop which hand is closed, which hand is open. Then they're going to finish up with 225s butterfly, minimize stroke count and time. And there, they're going to put it all together, swim long, swim big, swim fast. And based upon all the work they've done in this set, they should be able to make that happen by using a really great pull. Repeat it twice, try to see if they can be better on the second round. Last set is a little bit more speed-based, so they're going to go 3 times 30 seconds power pull with a buoy and a stretch cord. So they're trying to get as far as possible, and once they stop, they're trying to hold their position for as long as possible throughout the entire 30 seconds. First one's upside down paddles, second one is single paddle on one side, the third one is single paddle on the other side. Then they're going to go 25 butterfly with stretch cord. They're going to try to take as few strokes as possible. Now, because of the stretch cord, it's going to be more and more difficult as they go. They're going to take a lot of strokes, but they're trying to take as few as possible. And now, across the rounds, if they can improve, even better. 25 butterfly, minimize stroke count and time, trying to be long and fast, and then a 25 butterfly fast where they put it all together and they let it rip. So it's a great way to help swimmers learn how to hold water, how to be efficient. We're going to use different hand postures, we're using resistance, and we're challenging them with performance. This set's more about speed, and so if swimmers can learn these skills at speed, they're going to be able to create speed when they swim butterfly. So when it comes down to it, the butterfly pull is about 3 key things. They need to create a big surface area, they need to hold that surface area throughout the whole stroke, and they need to accelerate the limbs in order to do so. By using some select drills, some select performance strategies, we can help swimmers learn this really challenging skill. Without an effective kick, most butterflyers are going to be in a whole lot of trouble, and it's going to be really difficult for them to continue to improve and to continue to get faster. And while performing traditional kick sets can be really useful for developing the kick, in a lot of cases, swimmers need a little bit of extra help in order to take their kick to the next level. We're going to talk about why it's so important, the skills they need to improve, what those skills look like in action, the challenges of improving the butterfly kick, the solutions to those challenges, the strategies that are really useful for developing a great one, and we'll go over some practical sets that you can use either right away or as inspiration to design your own sets. Let's check it out. So why does the butterfly kick matter? Well, it's all about the hips. The kick has a direct influence of the position of the hips and how they move through the water. So there's 2 things that the kick does. It moves the hips forwards and it moves the hips up. So to go fast, swimmers need to move their hips, their body, down the pool. And the kick is going to move their hips forward. It's going to create propulsion that pushes them down the pool. And any propulsion that moves them down the pool is going to help them go faster. So the more that the kick can contribute to that, the faster swimmers are going to be able to go. The second and less appreciated aspect of the kick is it moves the hips up. And so whenever swimmers breathe, whenever they pull, whenever they recover the arms, that's going to lower the hips in the water. And so something needs to happen to get those hips back up. What's that? It's going to be the kick. And the reason that's so important is that lower hips mean more resistance, which means less speed. Swimmers are going to go slower, and it's going to be a whole lot more difficult to swim butterfly well. So the kick not only moves them down the pool faster, it moves the hips up so that it can reduce the amount of resistance that they create, which in turn is going to make butterfly a lot faster and a lot easier. So a strong, effective kick serves 2 really important purposes. And when those purposes are achieved, it's going to be much easier for swimmers to go fast. So what's an effective butterfly kick? There's 2 aspects of it. First is that there's a whip-like kicking action, And the second is that there's two positions that swimmers have to execute a great kick from. So first of all, the whip-like kicking action. There's going to be a down kick that's directed down and back, which moves the hips up and forwards. And that's a part that creates a lot of the propulsion that helps swimmers move down the pool and keep the hips up. And during that kick, the hips are going to move, the knees are going to move, and then the ankles are going to move in order to create a lot of propulsion. In contrast, the up kick is very straight as opposed to bent, and that allows swimmers to set up the kick and then snap it back down. If the up kick is all bending from the knees, swimmers aren't going to be able to create that whipping action, and they're going to create a lot less propulsion, and it's going to have a much less positive effect on their position in the water when swimmers kick both down and back. The other important aspect of the kick is that body position is very different during the two kicks. So one kick happens when the hands enter the water, and the body is going to be relatively flat when that kick happens. And the second kick happens as the hand exits, and the body is going to be angled in the water. So one kick happens when the body's flat, the other kick happens when the body is angled. So that's going to require a slightly different kicking action, and some kicking activities preferentially stress one position versus the other. And if we want swimmers to have the full skill set, we're going to have to train each aspect of the kick. So if we watch the kick here, this first kick, when the hands enter, the body's going to be relatively flat during the kick. And then during the second kick here, you can see the body's going to be at a much steeper angle. So those two kicks are somewhat different in terms of how they're executed because of the position of the body. So we want swimmers to be able to be skilled in both those kicks. Now, if we watch the movement of the legs, the recovery kick is going to be straight here and the knees bend there, but that's only because he's started to kick already. He's already bringing his knees forward to kick with. And so again, it's going to be a relatively straight up kick, and then the knees snap forward, and then the feet snap forward to execute that kick. So again, a straighter up kick, and then snapping through with the whole kick. It's that straighter aspect of the up kick which sets up the whipping action of the down kick. It's a little bit different on the other kick, but you can see the legs are being recovered straight, and they start to bend there right when the knees start coming down to execute the kick. And so there's going to be a straight aspect of the recovery right there, and then the knees drive forwards, and then the feet drive forwards for the down kick. So two important aspects of the skill: the position of the body and where the kick happens, and then also the difference between the up kick and the down kick. The up kick is going to be straighter, and then the down kick is going to snap down in a wave. The hips move, then the knees move, and then the ankles move, and that's going to create that whipping action that creates a ton of propulsion, sending the hips up and forward down the pool. So what's the challenge? Well, when most swimmers think about working their kick, they just think about traditional kicking sets where they just work hard. So they don't necessarily appreciate that there's a skill to it as compared to when they're breathing or when they're using their arms or any of the other skills in swimming. Kicking is just as much of a skill, it's just a different skill, and even though most kicking is going to be relatively challenging, that doesn't mean it's just about effort, it's also about execution. The other challenge is that there are multiple components that need to be developed. We've got the difference between the down kick and the up kick, and we've got the difference in the body positions between when the head is up and when the head is down. So there's multiple aspects of the kick that need to be developed over time. And the fitness component of the kick is critical as well. And that creates a challenge because swimmers can't just do skill work, they can't just train, because they have to develop the skills and they have to develop the fitness, and they have to develop them more or less at the same time. So we have to find strategies that allow swimmers to do that, allows them to work on their skills and develop their fitness all at the same time. So when it comes to solutions, the ones that are going to be effective are going to be the ones that overcome those challenges. They have to encourage swimmers to actually think about their skills as opposed to just working hard, putting their head down, and getting the job done. And there has to be a specific focus on the skills that we've discussed in terms of the body position of the kick and the differences between the down kick and the up kick. And finally, we have to find solutions that allow for the development of both skill and fitness at more or less the same time, because both qualities are really important in order to have a great kick, and you can't necessarily separate the two. So if we use skill development strategies that don't develop fitness at all, it's not going to be very effective. And if we just try to develop their fitness and hope that the skills improve too, that's not going to work either. First up is vertical kicking, and one of the reasons the strategy is really effective is that it helps swimmers learn how to kick down and back relative to when they're on their stomach. Because they're going to be kicking back and forth during the vertical kicking, and they have to be kicking down in order to stay afloat, that means they're going to develop the ability to kick both down and back when they finally get back on their stomach, because they have to kick in both directions when vertical kicking or they're not going to stay afloat. They have to kick forwards and backwards. They have to kick down in order to stay up in the water. The other benefit of vertical kicking is that the legs tend to be worked relatively evenly, and so it tends to emphasize both the down kick and the up kick, and the up kick is something that swimmers tend to overlook, so we're going to get more balanced development of the kick. You can also have swimmers focus on keeping their legs relatively straight, which is going to preferentially stress the up kick, and that can be really useful if swimmers are struggling with this skill. And because vertical kicking is novel relative to kicking on a board or kicking on the stomach, it's easier to create change because swimmers don't have the same preconceived notions of what they're able to do. And lastly, vertical kicking is great because it's solid work, and so we're developing the fitness as they're learning these skills. And so vertical kicking is exactly what you think it is. They're just straight up in the water and they're kicking back and forth, trying to stay afloat. So the key aspect here is staying afloat, being consistent with the tempo, and you can ask them to change the size of their kicks. You can have them focus on the up kick. You can change how they're executing it, but the same concept applies. They're just trying to stay afloat and they're using the legs to make that happen. The next strategy is to use positional dolphin kicking. So if you want to develop the first kick when the hands enter the water, you can have them wear a snorkel. You can have them do that with their hands on a board. You can have them do it with their hands down by their side. You can have them do it in streamline. In every case, they're going to be really level in the water, and that's going to help them develop the ability to kick in that position more effectively. If you want to develop the second kick when the hands are exiting the water, now you can have them kick on a board, but without the snorkel. So now their head's going to be up, their hips are going to be a little bit lower, and that's going to better create the position that they're going to be in when the hands exit the water and they execute the kick at that time. Another strategy to put even more pressure on that skill is you have them with their hands straight out in front without a board, and so they're surf kicking, and they're going to have to kick really hard, really effectively, and their hips are going to be pretty low there, so they're going to have to really work to keep the hips up. And so that's going to put even more pressure on that particular skill and that particular position. And so by using different types of dolphin kicking in our training, we can challenge different aspects of the skill. And since we want well-rounded butterfly kickers, because that means they're going to be better butterfly swimmers, we want to use different kicking positions throughout their development in order to help them develop all those skills. And if you want to put more pressure on the up kick, you can just have them kick on their back. That will tend to stress the muscles on the back of the legs more so than kicking on the stomach. And so while it's less specific to butterfly itself, it's really effective for developing the up kick, and that means a better kicking skill set as a whole. So different positions, we can change the stress on the legs, and we can change the stress on different skills. Next up is 4 kicks, 1 pull. So once swimmers have a solid kicking action, once they've developed that, or as they're developing it, we need to help them learn how to kick more effectively when they're actually swimming. So 4 kicks, 1 pull is a great transition from regular kicking to full stroke butterfly because we've added some of the arms in, but they're still emphasizing the legs. So while this can be used effectively as a drill, my preference, especially when trying to develop the legs, is to really train it. And so you have them do it fast, challenge them in different ways, and they have to create speed with the legs in order to make that happen. They can't just use the arms because the arms are being used pretty infrequently. They got to create speed with the legs, and they also have to use good kick timing because if they don't, they just won't go fast. And so that's a great way to help swimmers learn how to use the legs more effectively within the actual stroke. So once they've developed the kick, as they're developing the kick, help them figure out how to use that better kick, use that a more effective kick within the context of their actual butterfly swimming. Using 4 kicks, 1 pull is a great way to make that happen, all while still developing the fitness of the legs. So as you can see with this swimmer, he's going to exaggerate the legs. He's got to have good timing. He's got to keep everything going. And so if he wants to go fast, if he's got time goals he's trying to hit, if he's trying to descend, he's trying to build, he's trying to negative split, whatever it is, he's going to have to make that happen with the kick. If he's not kicking effectively, if he's not kicking at the right time, he's not going to create speed. So once they have a solid kick, start getting them to use it while they're actually swimming and while they're using a drill like this to transition to regular swimming while overloading the legs. Now, if you ever want to help swimmers create more propulsion in any stroke, resistance is going to be a powerful tool. Specific to butterfly kicking, there's 3 ways to handle it. You can resist the body, you can use drag socks, or you can try to find alternatives. So resisting the body, that's using a parachute, that's using a cord, that's using a power tower, that's using a sponge. You're tying some type of resistance to the body and you're asking swimmers to move forwards. It's really effective for helping swimmers learn how to create pressure on the water. They can better feel how their feet are interacting with the water. They're going to feel if they're creating pressure, if they're slipping through at different points of the kick, and it's going to encourage them to create more propulsion with each kick, and it's going to encourage them to create more propulsion more effectively. If they've got to hit a certain time, they've got to create more propulsion, and they've got to direct it backwards in order to move themselves forward. Drag socks are also really effective because they preferentially develop that whipping kick action. If swimmers just keep their legs completely straight, they're not going to go anywhere with drag socks. If they just bend the knees, they're not going to go anywhere with drag socks. So not only does it challenge them physically, it encourages them to use an effective kicking action, one that's pretty straight on the up kick and then whips back down, and that's going to develop the skill of kicking really well while at the same time developing the fitness of the legs. Now, you might not have access to parachutes or cords. You might not have access to drag socks. There's always options. You can use vertical kick, like we talked about earlier, but have their hands up above the water or even in streamline. The higher the hands are, the more difficult it's going to be, the more resistance there will be on the legs because more of the body is out of the water. You can go tombstone kick where they're using a kickboard and they're kicking against it. You can go wall kick, so they're just kicking into the wall. Those are all strategies that are going to help them learn to create more propulsion because they're going to feel more resistance on the feet. That's going to improve the skill. That's also going to improve the strength of the kick. So resistance is really powerful. It's a really effective strategy for helping swimmers improve their kicking. Next strategy is actually training the kick. So while the tools we've discussed so far are really useful, if you just do them at slow speeds and at controlled intensities, swimmers aren't going to learn a whole lot. You got to use the strategies and then really train the kick. Get swimmers to go fast. You want to build the capacity to repeat performances over and over and over again to extend their skills over longer periods of time, and you're trying to build speed at the same time. The more you can train all the strategies we talked about, and the more they can improve their performances in those sets, the better their kick is going to be. You can also use kick plus swim sets where they're kicking and swimming during the same set. You're going to train the kick, and you're going to train the ability to kick while swimming, which is equally as important, and you're going to train the ability to use the legs when they're tired when they're swimming, which is what's going to happen in races. So get swimmers to go fast in those sets, and again, you want to build capacity, build speed, so that they can continue to get better over time. So the big picture concept here is to use the tools and the strategies we've already talked about, where swimmers pretty much have to kick well, and then ask them to go hard, ask them to go faster, ask them to go longer. And so if you can develop that ability, their skills are going to improve and their fitness is going to improve, and that means their kicking is going to improve. First set is relatively simple. We're going to go 3 rounds through. They're going to go 6 times, 20 seconds on, 20 seconds off, vertical kick. The odds, they're going to focus on really tight kicks. The evens, they're going to focus on really big kicks. They're going to try to feel what amplitude is going to be most effective for them. Then they're going to go 475, so they're going to go 25 dolphin kick on their back and streamline. That's going to work the up kick. And then we're going to go 25 4 kicks on pull, so they're trying to feel how to integrate the legs into their swimming, and then a 25 butterfly. They're going to descend those 1 to 4 just to get a little bit faster, just to put a little bit pressure on those skills. So they're really setting things up on the vertical kicking, and then they're trying to make it happen during those 75s, trying to transition the skill of kicking into their butterfly swimming. Next set, a little bit more of an endurance feel. So they'll start off with 2 50s, dolphin kick with a parachute. Number 1's with a board. Number 2 is with a board and a snorkel. They're solid effort. And the goal there is just to help swimmers feel the added resistance, feel the added pressure on their feet, and they're going to be challenged by the position that they're in. They're going to work both positions, one with the head up and one with the head down. Then they're going to go 4 100s, 25 streamline dolphin kick on the back. Again, working on the up kick here. And then a 25 4 kicks 1 pull. They're going to try to make everything happen. They're going to try to flow into that skill and try to get the kick working within the arms. They're going to descend those 1 to 4, try to get a little bit faster each time. Then they're going to go 50 butterfly strong, same stroke count each 25. Hopefully they got a really strong, powerful kick driving that stroke forward. We're going to repeat that 3 more times. The only difference is those 100s, we're going to go 3 and then 2 and then 1. And they're still going to descend, but they're going to descend down to faster. And on the 50s, we're going to flip-flop the kickboard and snorkel with the kickboard. And so it's going to be reversed on every other round so that they can get the challenge of kicking in different positions, but doing so in a different order. Each round, they're trying to get better on those 100s, as I said, and that 50 butterfly strong. They're trying to keep the stroke count the same, but they're still trying to get faster as they go. Last set is more of a speed set, so we're going to use drag socks the whole way through. And what we're trying to accomplish there is we're trying to really encourage that extra whipping action through the kick, and we're obviously going to challenge it from a strength perspective. So they're going to go 25 streamline dolphin kick on the back, fast with drag socks. Then they're going to go 25 4 kicks, 1 pull with drag socks, and then they're going to go 25 butterfly with drag socks. So they're going to repeat that 2 more times, but we're going to change the kicking position. The next one's going to be flat on the water, board, snorkel, dolphin kick, and then the one after that, it's going to be head up, so dolphin kick with a board and drag socks. Then on the last 25, the 10th 25, they're going to take the gear off and they're just going to let it rip. So we're asking them to create speed when they're kicking. We're asking them to create speed when they're going 4 kicks, 1 pull. We're asking them to create speed when they're swimming butterfly. And so we're going from kick to drill to swim. We're getting more and more upper body as we go, and we're helping them learn to integrate the arms, and we're helping them learn to integrate the legs and the arms as they go. The drag socks create an extra added challenge, and then swimmers get the chance to put it all together without the drag socks at the end. One of the reasons butterfly is so difficult is because swimmers create so much resistance as they move through the water. They have to recover both arms over the water at the same time, and to do so, they have to lift the upper body, which is going to push down the lower body, which is going to create a ton of resistance as they go through the water. So if swimmers want to go fast, and if they want to make life easier for themselves, they've got to go through the water as level as possible, and that means improving their horizontal alignment. And if they can do so, they're going to go fast. We're going to talk all things horizontal alignment and butterfly. We're going to talk about why it matters, we're going to talk about what it is, and most importantly, we're going to talk about what to do about it. And as always, we'll keep it simple. Let's dive in. So why does it matter? Less resistance equals more speed. And the more vertical swimmers move through the water as they're swimming butterfly, the more resistance they create. The more horizontal swimmers move through the water as they're swimming butterfly, the less resistance they create. So if swimmers can have great horizontal alignment, that means they're going to be able to swim butterfly with less effort and more speed. And since those are two of the most important outcomes you could ever ask for, horizontal alignment is a pretty big deal. So helping swimmers learn how to really improve their horizontal alignment is going to be really important for helping them achieve their goals in butterfly. So what is horizontal alignment? As butterflyers swim, there's going to be a wave of undulation throughout the stroke. So that wave goes up to recover the arms. So swimmers have to lift their upper body, their chest, in order to get their arms up and over the water smoothly and effortlessly. Then the wave has to go back down so that the swimmer can get back into position to start the next stroke cycle. So that wave is going to go up and it's going to go down. And the smaller the amplitude of the wave, the more horizontal alignment there will be. And then the bigger the amplitude of the wave, the more resistance there's going to be, the less horizontal alignment there's going to be as swimmers move through the water. However, it's not necessarily about minimizing undulation, it's about optimizing undulation. There has to be enough undulation to get the arms up and over the surface of the water to recover them smoothly. And there also has to be sufficient undulation on the other side to get the body back into alignment after coming up out of the water to get the arms over the surface. So if swimmers use too much undulation, like I just showed you, there's going to be that big wave up and down, and that's going to create resistance. And if they use too little undulation, they're also going to create more resistance because they're not going to be able to effectively or smoothly recover the arms. They're going to either have to drag them through the water, or they're going to have to use a ton of effort to get them forwards, and that's going to cause more resistance as well. So it's all about finding the sweet spot so swimmers can recover the arms sufficiently, but not create too much resistance in order to do so. The more effectively swimmers can find the optimal amount of undulation for them, the faster they're going to swim. So let's cover those 2 points in a little bit more detail. So to recover the arms, the upper body does have to lift up and out of the water, or else the arms aren't going to be able to get out of the water. Most swimmers don't have the ability to move the arm well behind the body to get the arms over the surface, so they have to lift up in order to make that happen. The idea is once they lift enough to recover the arms over the water, they don't want to do more because that'll just raise them up unnecessarily, which is going to push the hips down unnecessarily, which is going to create more resistance. So they have to lift the upper body up out of the water to recover the arms, but they only want to do as much as they have to. On the flip side of that, breathing and recovering the arms necessarily causes lifting of the upper body, which is going to move the swimmer out of alignment. So swimmers have to get back into alignment after the breath, after the arm recovery, to minimize the resistance. And when the upper body goes up, the hips go down. So they have to find a way to get the hips back up into alignment after each breath and after each arm recovery. Here too, it's as much as necessary, as little as possible. We don't necessarily need to have the hips way up out of the surface because in order to do that, they'll probably have to press their chest, which again is going to disrupt their horizontal alignment and create more resistance. So they have to get back into alignment after every stroke, but they don't want to overdo it where they're creating more resistance with really high hips and really low head and chest. So the big takeaway is as much as necessary, as little as possible. So if we watch this swimmer here at the beginning of the stroke cycle, you can see she's relatively level in the water. Now when she needs to breathe and recover the arms, you can see she's going to lose that alignment. She's going to be at an angle. And that's necessary for her to get the shoulders out of the water so she can recover the arms. And then afterwards, she's got to get back into alignment. And you can see the hips come back up to the surface. She presses the chest a little bit, but she's not diving excessively in order to do so. And like with the breath, it's as much as necessary, as little as possible. And then when she lifts to recover the arms, again, she's getting them out of the water, but she's not trying to go straight up. She's trying to do so with as little disruption of alignment as possible, and then getting back into position again after that breath, after the arm recoveries. So she's going to have to come up to recover the arms and to breathe, but she's trying to do so as little as possible. And then when she recovers the arms, she's trying to get back into alignment, but she's trying not to dive, trying not to exaggerate it in order to get into the best position as she can to start the next stroke cycle. So we take a look at another swimmer here. You can see at the beginning of the stroke cycle, good alignment here. And then as he comes through the pull, he's going to set up the arm recovery by lifting up out of the water. Again, he's not going vertical. He's trying to keep it as horizontal as possible. And then when he comes back, he needs to get back into alignment, get the hips back up right there. But again, he's got to press a little bit, but he's not diving down in order to make that happen. So minimizing how much he needs to rise up out of the water to recover the arms, and then minimizing what he needs to do to get back into alignment at the front of the stroke to set up the next stroke. So managing undulation and horizontal alignment is all about using as much range of motion as necessary, but as little as possible to keep resistance as low as possible to create as much speed as possible. So we'll take a look at one more swimmer here performing a 200 to demonstrate that the amount of undulation can change a little bit depending on how fast swimmers go and also just depending on the swimmer. So this swimmer, you can see that there's a little bit more undulation here. She's coming up a little bit higher. She's pressing a little bit lower. And so you're going to get slightly different amounts of undulation based upon the event that swimmers are swimming as well as their own individual characteristics. So a little bit more undulation than the previous two swimmers, partly because she's doing a 200 and she's probably just a different athlete as well. However, the same principles apply, trying to create as much undulation as necessary and as little as possible. Before we get into solutions, what are some of the challenges with improving horizontal alignment in butterfly? I just alluded to it in the videos, but different swimmers swimming at different speeds are going to have to use different amounts of undulation. There's no one solution that applies to all swimmers in all situations. If swimmers are going a little faster, they're going to have to tighten things up because they don't have as much time to go through full undulation cycles. And if they're swimming a 200, they can maybe get away with it more because the stroke rate is going to be a little bit slower. More importantly, different swimmers are going to need to use different amounts of undulation to optimize their alignment. If swimmers have really flexible shoulders, they may be able to stay lower in the water, not have to raise as high, and still recover the arms smoothly. If swimmers are really inflexible, they're probably going to have to come up more to give themselves enough space to get the arms over the surface. So another example is if swimmers have really long and dense legs, they're going to have to work harder to get the hips back up after each stroke cycle than the swimmer who has much shorter legs and much less dense legs. That's just one example of how different body proportions can affect the amount of undulation. The point isn't that you need to know all those different factors, it's that you can't necessarily know those factors, and that makes it hard to prescribe exactly what amount of undulation a given swimmer should use. Another challenge is that the skill of optimizing horizontal alignment is more about removing unnecessary movements rather than adding movements. We often think about what we have to do, but sometimes it's thinking about what we don't have to do that's really important, and that can be a different shift for a lot of swimmers and coaches alike. Telling a swimmer to stay level or to swim flat doesn't work nearly as well as telling the swimmer to bend their arm at a certain degree. It's much more difficult for swimmers to conceptualize. Finally, small changes can add up, so small mistakes in alignment can lead to big losses in speed, and a lot of these changes aren't necessarily obvious for coaches to see, and they have to be felt by swimmers so that they can make the adjustments, they can make the changes that are going to help them swim faster. And to help them become more aware of what's happening, that's a different approach than simply telling them what to do. So now let's talk solutions. We're going to go over 4 drills that can be really effective at helping swimmers feel these key skills and also feel what it's like when they're not executing these key skills. And then we're going to go over 2 strategies that you can use regardless of what activities you're doing to help further enhance learning and really accelerate their progress. You want to have multiple really effective solutions because sometimes one thing will work for one swimmer and it won't work for another. By having multiple options, you're more likely to reach more of the swimmers and create a positive change in more of the swimmers. First activity we're going to talk about is the ball float to X float. And so swimmers are going to be in a ball. They're going to be floating on the surface of the water, and then they're going to expand everything out, making an X with the arms and the legs. And so this allows swimmers to feel the support of their lungs, and they can use the flotation to stay aligned. And they also learn how to lean into the lungs to support the hip. So a huge part of horizontal alignment is getting back into alignment after the stroke, learning to press the chest, learning how to control posture and position by leaning into the lungs. And so swimmers are going to have to take the pressure off the lungs in order to breathe and recover the arms effectively. Then they're going to need to put the pressure back on the lungs in order to get back into alignment. The better they can feel the lungs, the more aware they are of the lungs, the easier it's going to be to execute these skills. Another key benefit of this skill is swimmers learn how to hold tension in the legs to keep the legs up at the surface, and that's a key aspect of moving through the water horizontally. Finally, because swimmers are moving dynamically during this drill, it allows them to learn how to manage position, control position while moving the limbs in space, which is very different than trying to control position statically. So here's what it looks like. Swimmers are going to be at a ball. That'll allow them to float on the surface, and then they slowly extend the arms out at an angle as well as the legs out at an angle. And you can have swimmers do this with different positions. You can have them go wide. You can have them go narrow. You can have them move the arms really, really slow. You can have them move the arms and legs really, really fast. You can challenge them in different ways. The idea here is that they learn how to create pressure into the water to maintain as an effective position as they can. And the better they get, the more skilled they'll be at managing the horizontal alignment in butterfly as well as the other strokes. Second activity is one-arm butterfly. I really like this activity because it allows for the same essential rhythm of butterfly, but it does so in a simplified version, which makes it easier for swimmers to control their skills. They get more repetition and they have more control over those repetitions. So what this is really effective for is helping swimmers understand the up and down nature of the stroke and how to control that up and down nature to, one, make sure it's sufficient to recover the arms, but two, it's small enough that minimizes the amount of resistance that's created. It's really useful for helping swimmers feel how the kick drives the rhythm of the stroke and how they can use the kick to keep everything in line, especially getting back into alignment at the end of the stroke cycle. It's much easier for swimmers to feel in one-arm butterfly versus full stroke butterfly. It's easier to perform, and when they have that basic rhythm, they have that basic timing, it's much easier to transition into regular full stroke butterfly because it's the same basic timing. They're just going to have to use both arms simultaneously in full stroke butterfly. So here's what it looks like in action. You can see he's got to come up to get the arm out of the water, and he's also got to get the hips back up at the end of the stroke cycle to get everything back into alignment. So he's got the same basic rhythm as regular butterfly, the same undulation rhythm, and he can work on the magnitude of that undulation in a much simpler context, which is ultimately going to improve his skills in full stroke butterfly. Next up is fly with flutter kick. So it's really effective for helping swimmers learn to control their undulation. You take the dolphin kick out, you reduce the up and down motion that's created by the dolphin kick, and it encourages swimmers to stay more level, and it encourages them to minimize the amount of resistance that they create. So for swimmers that have a ton of undulation, this can be really effective. And even in swimmers that don't have a ton of undulation, it can be useful for helping them understand how to move through the water with even less resistance. There's two different ways you can do this. You can either do it with one-arm butterfly or you can do it with two-arm butterfly. The one arm is going to be less specific, obviously, not having to recover both arms at the same time. However, the benefit is that it's lower intensity and you can usually do more repetitions. In contrast, the double arm version is a lot more specific. It's probably more useful for helping swimmers learn, but it's a lot harder, it's higher intensity, and that means you can get less repetitions. So they're both really useful. It just depends on the context in terms of which one is going to be more appropriate for your situation. So we'll start with the one-arm version here. As you can see, there's still going to be a little bit of undulation. He's got to do that to get the arms out of the water. However, it's a lot flatter as compared to one-arm version with dolphin kick. And so for swimmers that are undulating a lot, this can be really useful for helping to flatten things out and promote a more effective horizontal alignment as a swimmer moves through the water. Here we have butterfly with flutter kick. And again, there's still going to be some undulation, but it's a lot more level than when he's swimming regular butterfly. He's going to be moving through the water with less up and down motion. It's going to be more horizontal. And for swimmers that have a lot of undulation in the stroke, this can be really useful for helping them to learn how to stay more level and create less resistance in their butterfly. Our last drill, we're going to use head-up butterfly, which can exaggerate the loss of alignment as swimmers move through the water. And so that exaggeration, that contrast, can help them better feel effective alignment when they're swimming with the head back down. And so it's that contrast that can be really useful for learning to exaggerate and amplify the effects of poor position. And when swimmers are swimming with the head up, they can really feel poor hip position, and that means they're going to be better able to feel effective position when the head is back down. By creating better sensory awareness, they're more likely to better execute the skills when they need to. Head-up butterfly also exaggerates the kicking action. Swimmers have to kick harder to stay up, and they have to time the kick more effectively to stay up as well. And since the kick is effective for keeping the hips up at the surface of the water, if swimmers aren't executing their kicks effectively or at the right time, they're really going to struggle with their alignment. And so this drill can help reinforce the kick and reinforce the effectiveness of it as well as the timing. So if we watch here, he's going to have a much more inclined position throughout the whole stroke. And as you can see, he's going to have to kick hard in order to keep his hips up throughout the entire stroke cycle. So this is a great way to exaggerate a loss of alignment as well as reinforce the effectiveness and the importance of the kick in order to maintain great alignment. So with one drill, we're accomplishing two really important objectives. In order to better improve horizontal alignment, we can make the drills we just discussed and regular butterfly even more effective at improving horizontal alignment by using resistance. While resistance is typically used to improve propulsion, I found that it can be really effective for improving horizontal alignment as well. It does so for two reasons. First, it increases the challenge. Resistance typically pulls swimmers out of position, and that makes it much more difficult to maintain alignment, and that means they're going to have to work even harder to make it happen. By being challenged, by working harder, that's actually going to improve their skills. And once they take the resistance off, it's going to be a lot easier for them to execute correctly, and they're going to be able to execute even more effectively. So resistance is a really powerful learning tool precisely because it makes it more difficult to swim really well and to maintain great alignment. It's also really effective for increasing awareness. Swimmers can better perceive how they're moving through the water. The resistance slows things down a little bit, and the added resistance makes it a little bit easier for swimmers to feel what's happening so they can better feel their alignment, they can better feel their position, and like we talked about earlier, a lot of these mistakes are pretty small in magnitude. The more awareness swimmers have, the more they can feel what's happening, the more effective they're going to be at changing things that you as a coach may otherwise not be aware of or not be able to see. So we're helping swimmers improve their ability to detect mistakes and to fix them. So when it comes to alignment and resistance, different types of resistance have a little bit different impact. The parachute will tend to pull the hips down. The drag socks make it more difficult for swimmers to kick, which is going to necessarily let the hips come down more. A weight belt is going to pull the hips down as well because it's going to literally weigh them down. And it also creates more awareness of the hip movement because there's going to be all that extra mass at the hips. So when the hips move during the normal course of undulation, swimmers are going to be able to better feel that. They're going to be more aware of that. Finally, swimmers can wear shorts too, and that's also going to pull the hips down because of that added drag. And that added drag is going to further increase awareness of the hips because swimmers are going to feel them move more because they're going to feel the resistance as the hips move through the water with the shorts on. So these different types of resistance increase the challenge and they help swimmers become more aware of how they're moving through the water, how effectively they're moving through the water, and when they're making mistakes. Regardless of the drills that I'm using or whether I'm swimming full stroke butterfly, I'm typically always asking for performance at some level using either stroke counts, stroke rates, or speed. So there's two different ways you can do this. You can have them do the drills, the sensory activities, and then perform. So they'll do 425s with one-arm butterfly and then 425s butterfly, minimize stroke count and time. So the first 425s help them feel what's happening, have them more aware of how they're moving through the water and how they're executing horizontal alignment. And then they try to apply that during the 425s butterfly, or you can have them perform during both. So let's say they're doing 425s one-arm butterfly with drag socks, minimize stroke count and time. So now they got the resistance, they're doing the drill, but they have to execute speed and length at the same time. And then they're going into the 425s butterfly, minimize stroke count and time. Both strategies are effective. You can use either one or you can use both. Regardless, by asking swimmers to perform, you're going to encourage them to swim differently. And by using drills with specific purpose and then adding resistance if necessary or desired, you can encourage them to swim in different ways that lead to better alignment. Asking for performance is a great way to turbocharge change because it requires swimmers to swim differently. Having discussed the different solutions, let's see what they look like in practice with some specific sets. This set is a little bit more of a skill set, so we're going to go 3 rounds through. We're going to go 825s and then 625s. The 825s are one-arm butterfly. The odds are with the left arm. The evens are with the right. They're going to alternate between 2 flutter kick and 2 dolphin kick. So the first 2, they're going to be a little bit more level. Then they're going to try to maintain that same alignment while integrating the dolphin kick. The second 4 are going to be faster at the same stroke count as the first 4. And so they're going to have to create more speed without giving up any efficiency. Then they're going to go 625s butterfly. The odds are flutter kick. The evens are with dolphin kick. So same idea, a little bit more level on the odds, and then getting back into a butterfly rhythm on the evens. They're going to descend 1 to 3 in pairs at the same stroke count. So they can't take more strokes, but they got to find more speed. And before each of these repetitions, they're going to perform 3 ball float to X floats. And the purpose there is to help them feel how to be more aligned, how to use the lungs in order to stay in alignment as they move through the water. Second rounds with shorts to just create a little bit extra resistance around the hips so swimmers can better feel how they're moving through the water. And then they'll take the shorts off for the last round so they can take what they learned during the shorts work and apply that to regular butterfly swimming. So a simple way to help them become more aware of how they're moving through the water and the impact of their alignment. Next set here is a little bit more of an endurance focus. So they're going to go 450s and then 1225s. They'll repeat that for 3 rounds. The same basic pattern for each round. However, they're going to do something a little bit different each round. So they're always going to go 450s, one-arm butterfly, 25 left, 25 right. That's just to help them groove that skill. Then they're going to go 4 rounds of 325s. The first one is butterfly with flutter kick. Really helps swimmers stay level. The next one, they're going to go 4 cycles of head up butterfly and then no breath into the wall to get the contrast between a really high head position and a really low head position and how that impacts alignment. Then they're going to go 25 butterfly to finish. In round 1, they're going to descend the 450s 1 to 4, and the 425s, they're going to descend those 1 to 4 by round. In round 2, they're going to build the strong on all 450s and all the 25s. And then in the last round, they're going to minimize stroke count and time for all the repetitions. So we're using different drills to help swimmers feel these skills. They're also adding speed on all 3 rounds and length on the last round in order to challenge swimmers to execute their skills differently, execute the drills differently, and then put it all together with regular butterfly. So a solid way to get a decent amount of volume in with a really great skill focus to help swimmers improve their fitness and improve their horizontal alignment. Next set is more of a speed set to work on these skills at faster speeds. They're going to go 3 rounds through. They're going to go 8 cycles of head up butterfly fast. Then they're going to go 25 butterfly with flutter kick, minimize stroke count and time, and then a 25 butterfly, minimize stroke count and time. They'll repeat that 3 times and then go 25 butterfly fast. They're going to repeat the whole thing 3 times. On the first round, those first 9 efforts are with a parachute. The second round, they're with drag socks. The third round, they're going to be with shorts or a weight belt. So we're challenging swimmers to execute these skills against the resistance at pretty high speeds while still being efficient. So they're going to have to find ways to optimize their alignment, to optimize their undulation to create as much speed as they can and as much length as they can at the same time. And with a set like this, we'll give them a little bit more rest, ask for more speed, ask for more length to really challenge them to perform and execute these skills at high speeds. Ultimately, swimmers have to be able to swim well when swimming fast, and that's what a set like this is geared towards improving. Horizontal alignment in butterfly is a really critical skill for fast swimming. We've just gone through several different ways to help swimmers learn that skill, as well as sets to put that into practice. So at this point, it's just a matter of getting it done. Effective breathing is a critical skill in all the strokes, and that's certainly true for butterfly. If swimmers can't breathe effectively, they're going to make an already difficult stroke that much more challenging. Let's take a look at the key skills in great butterfly breathing, as well as how to improve them. We're going to go over why it matters, what swimmers need to do, the challenges of executing effective breathing, and then how to overcome those challenges. Finally, we'll wrap it up with some sets that you can implement with your swimmers today or use for inspiration to design your own sets. Let's get started. So why does breathing matter in butterfly? Well, the reality is that swimmers have to breathe. In every event over a 50, they're going to have to breathe, and if they're not breathing well, there's going to be problems. What are those problems? Well, swimmers are going to have to come up higher in order to breathe because they have to make sure that their mouth clears the water so they can actually get air in. The more the shoulders and the hips come up, the lower the hips are going to go. And the lower the hips are going to go, the more resistance swimmers are going to create as they move through the water. The more resistance that they create, the slower they go, and the harder it is. And if you've swum butterfly, if you've watched swimmers swim butterfly, you know that as soon as butterfly gets hard, things get real ugly, real fast, and everything we can do to avoid that situation is something we want to take advantage of. So with poor breathing comes less speed, less endurance, slower times. And so swimmers have to find a way to breathe that minimizes how high they come up to breathe and also helps them get back into position as quickly as possible. The better they can do that, the less resistance they'll create as a result of the breath, and the faster they're going to swim, and it's going to be a much more enjoyable experience, and they're going to be able to hold that speed for a whole lot longer. So what is great butterfly breathing? Well, it's as high as necessary and as low as possible. So swimmers have to be able to get air consistently, but they want to do so while minimizing the disruption of alignment as much as possible. So they need to get high enough that they can get air, and they want to stay low enough that they can stay level as they go. So one of the great ways to think about that is keeping the chin low as they breathe, as low to the surface as possible, and then getting the head back down fast so they can get out of those negative positions as quickly as possible. And so thinking about as high as necessary, as low as possible is a great way to conceptualize it for swimmers. Another great way to think about it is trying to minimize the difference between the breathing stroke and the non-breathing stroke. The non-breathing stroke is going to be pretty level. Can they maintain that same level position in the water even when they add the breath? That's the goal. They want to be as close as they can, and the more effectively they can do that, the closer they can get, the better the breath. In terms of timing, a great way to think about it is to breathe with the pull, and then they want to race the recovery back, trying to get back in line before the arms come around. Again, as high as necessary so they can get their air, as low as possible to minimize any disruption of alignment. And the smaller the difference between the breathing stroke and the non-breathing stroke, the better. And in terms of timing, start the breath as they pull, and then get the head back down before the arms enter the water. If they can execute those relatively simple skills, they're going to be set. So if we watch breathing here, what we'll see is that she's keeping the head really low. She's staying really low to the water, and that's allowing her to get that breath. It's as high as necessary. She's getting air, but it's also low as possible. You can see that chin is right on the surface of the water, and she's being really effective at staying low throughout the breath, and that's going to maintain her alignment as much as possible while still allowing her to get air. So she can accomplish both objectives, which is lots of air, as little resistance as possible. If she can do that, she's on track. So we've got another swimmer here, and what you can see here is he's going to alternate a non-breathing stroke and a breathing stroke. And what you're looking for is, you can see the head's going to come up a little bit, and on the non-breathing, it's going to come up a little bit more on the breathing stroke. And he's doing a really good job of minimizing the difference between the two. You can tell when he breathes, but it's not super obvious, and that's going to allow him to maintain as level a position in the water while still getting the air he needs. And that's ultimately going to help him accomplish the objective of getting oxygen while minimizing how much resistance he creates when he breathes. So low and fast is what we're really looking for. Another aspect to pay attention to is watch how she gets the head down before those hands come around. So right there, the head's going back down, and her head is down by the time the arms enter the water. So that's a key aspect of recovering the breath. Not only do we want to make sure it's low, but we want to make sure that swimmers get out of that negative position as quickly as possible and get back into a line with each stroke. We'll take a look at it under the water so that we can get a better sense of the timing. So if we watch here, she's going to start that breath as she starts to pull. So right here, the head's down, she starts to pull. Right there, you can see that that breath starts to come up, the head starts to come out, and then from a timing standpoint, bam, her head's back in the water before those arms get back in the water. So breathing with the pull, and then the head is back down ahead of the recovery. So effective breathing is ultimately simple. Breathe with the pull, get the head back down before the end of the recovery, and keep the breath as low as possible. So why is it so difficult? First of all, swimmers are worried about choking, and rightfully so. They probably had one or two experiences that they got a little bit too much water when they took a breath, and that's not something that they want to repeat. And so from their thought process, conscious or not, it's better to be safe than sorry. They're going to breathe a little bit higher than they probably absolutely need to. They don't want to take any chances. The other aspect is that too much butterfly with weak swimmers kind of creates survival breathing. So they're just trying to get to the other side of the pool, and in order to do that, they need to get air, and they're going to make sure that they get air. So they're going to use strategies that definitely guaranteed get them air, even if it's not necessarily the fastest way. And so if swimmers are swimming a lot of tired butterfly, or they're just not strong enough to swim it well in the first place, they're going to start developing bad timing and bad habits, which is something we want to avoid. And if swimmers are coming to you already established those habits, well, we've got our work cut out for us in terms of changing those habits. Lastly, small differences can have a major impact. Just a small change in the angle of the breath can have a big impact on the angle of the hips, which has a big impact on how much resistance that swimmers create as they move through the water. The problem is they can't necessarily feel those tiny changes. If they've performed thousands or 10,000s of breaths, they can't feel subtlety anymore. They're not going to be aware of the consequences of what they're doing because they've done it so many times. It just feels the same. And if they can't feel a difference, they're not going to be able to execute on a difference. So a lot of swimmers have fear about breathing too low. They simply have bad habits due to past experiences, and they can no longer feel the impact of their breath. So we have to overcome these challenges if we want to help swimmers improve their breathing. As with most skills in swimming, breathing in butterfly is ultimately pretty simple. Unfortunately, simple isn't easy. So we have to find ways to help swimmers learn how to breathe low, how to breathe fast, how to time their breath with the pull and get the head back down prior to the recovery if we want them to improve their breathing. We're going to have to help them feel these key skills, because if they can feel these key skills, then they're more likely to be able to change them. One, they need to understand what needs to happen. Two, they have to be able to feel what needs to happen. And then three, they need to be able to execute on what needs to happen. So let's check out our options for helping swimmers improve their breathing. First things first, swimmers need to make sure that they have effective overall arm-to-leg timing in butterfly. If they don't, they're going to really struggle to breathe effectively, because the whole rhythm, the whole timing of the stroke is going to be off. So if the timing's messed up, the breathing's going to be a challenge. When their timing's off, they're just going to find a way to breathe whenever it suits them. They don't care if it kills their speed. They can't tell if it kills their speed. They just need to find a way to breathe, and they're going to fit it in whenever they can. If the arms and the legs aren't doing the right thing at the right time, there's not going to be an effective time to breathe, so they're just going to pick one. So poor timing means poor strategy in terms of breathing. So if swimmers are struggling with their timing, you need to work on that first. And since timing is a video in and of itself, I've already made one. And if you click on the tab that pops up over there, you should be able to check that out. Now, their timing doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be good enough so that it's not obstructing the breath. So if they have timing issues, work on that, try to get that better, and then go about trying to fix the breath. So assuming they've got decent overall butterfly timing, skate drill is the first place to start in terms of improving the breath. So it's a simple strategy that just allows swimmers to feel what it's like to stay low and how to stay low. And so it's a great starting point for helping them conceive and understand how low they can breathe and how effective it is to breathe that low. So what they're going to do is they're just going to get that feel during skate drill, and then they're going to try to translate into their swimming using some of the strategies we're going to discuss later on. So the idea is to skate the chin on the surface of the water, hence the name, and that helps swimmers understand how to breathe forwards rather than up. If they breathe up, they're going to lose contact with the water, and if they breathe forward, they're going to be able to stay on the surface of the water, and they're going to be able to breathe really low. They also have to breathe when they pull, because if they don't, it's not going to really work at all. So as soon as they initiate the pull, they initiate the breath, and so swimmers can work on the timing of it as well, learning how to stay low and execute the breath in the timing with a pull. So here's the idea. Again, trying to breathe really low with the chin on the surface of the water and trying to hold that position. You don't need to dive down in the front of the stroke. You're trying to hold the surface and hold the chin on the surface so that they can really feel how they're skating forwards rather than coming up. And again, if you watch here, he takes the pull and then breathes as he pulls, and that's really what we're looking for here. So as the arms start to pull, that's when the breath goes, and then skating the chin on the surface, which helps them understand how to breathe low, and the feedback of the water lets them know if they're executing it correctly. Next strategy is either swimming with a snorkel or swimming without breathing. And so a lot of times the best way to help swimmers understand a skill is to take it away. And that's certainly true of breathing as well. So if you take away the breath, it becomes more obvious of the impact of the breath when swimmers add it back in when they go back to regular butterfly. And we talked about earlier, a lot of swimmers can't really tell or feel how the breath is impacting their stroke. But by taking the breath away and then adding it back in and then going back and forth between the two, they can start to tell the difference between when they're not breathing and when they're breathing, and they can take that gap and try to shrink it. And the more they can shrink it, the less resistance they're going to be creating as they breathe. And it's that awareness that we create by having them use a snorkel, by swimming without breathing, that allows them to make that progress. So the goal is to have great alignment without the breath, which should be relatively easy to do. And then they have to add the breath back in, and they want to maintain the same great alignment. If there's a difference, they want to shrink the difference. The more they can shrink the difference, the better the skill is. So let's say if the non-breathing stroke is a 10 and they start out with a breathing stroke that's rated at a 5, if they can get it to a 6, they've improved. If they can get it to a 7, they've improved even more, and so on. They may not make it to 10, but the closer they can get, the better. Now, in terms of using a snorkel or just having them not breathe, well, the snorkel allows them to do more work with less stress. If you're doing no air butterfly, you're going to have to give them more rest. You're not going to be able to do anything more than a 25 with any sort of volume. Whereas with a snorkel, you can do a lot more work, and you can do it with less stress. One, the value is that they get more work in, so they get more practice in. But two, it's just not as stressful either, which is beneficial as well. So a great strategy for helping swimmers learn to feel the difference when they breathe and when they don't, and allow them to contrast and go back and forth between the two to create even more awareness. So here we've got Butterfly with a snorkel, and as you can see, his head's going to rise up a little bit based upon the rhythm of his undulation. However, he's not coming up to breathe. And if he didn't have the snorkel on there, he's not getting any air. And so creating that position, allowing him to feel that position as he moves through the water, and then once we add the breath back in, he can try to maintain that same low position, that same low rhythm as much as possible. And the more times he can go back and forth between those two skills, the more effective he's going to be at learning how to breathe with maintaining great alignment and keeping a breath that's lower and less resistive. The next strategy is using different breathing patterns. So whether it's no breath, breathe every 3, breathe every 2, breathe every 1, and mixing those all up, it builds upon the previous strategy where there's a contrast between not breathing and breathing. Now we're going to have that contrast happening all the time within the same lap. And the more swimmers can manage different rhythms, different timings, and different breath patterns, the better they're going to be able to execute a great breath regardless of the situation. So breathing every 3 is going to feel a little bit different than breathing every 2, which is going to feel different than breathing every 1. But in every case, the goal is to have swimmers execute a really, really great breath. Regardless of how they're going to race, you want them practicing all of the different breathing patterns so that they can master all of them so that they can improve the overall skill in breathing. So they want to have great breathing regardless of their rhythm. And so once they can execute a single good breath, it's time to start challenging that with different breathing patterns. They can master a lot of different versions of the same basic skill. They're going to have better overall mastery of that skill. The more swimmers can learn how to create speed, create efficiency, create endurance with different breathing patterns and switch back and forth between the different breathing patterns, the more effective they're going to be at breathing in butterfly. A lot of swimmers tend to come up really high, again, because they're trying to make sure that they get air. And what they do with that is they use their hands and their arms to lift themselves up. Now, if we're sneaky, we have them close their fist and take away the hands, well, now it's going to be a whole lot harder for them to elevate to take that breath. And then they can start to feel the impact of it. It'll prevent them from coming up too high and disrupting alignment. Because they can't do that, they can feel what it's like to actually stay relatively level and stay relatively smooth when they take that breath. Then, having felt that, you can add the hands back in, make sure that they still get an effective pull, but tell them they have to have that same feeling, that same sensation when they breathe. It's forward rather than up. By using the different hand postures, swimmers can start to become aware of whether they are and to the extent that they're lifting in the water. And with every skill, if you can feel it, you can change it. So we just have to find a way to help them feel it. You can use lots of different hand positions. Anything that makes the hand smaller, makes the hand less effective is going to be useful. And you can use it when swimming regular butterfly. You can do it with skate drill. You can do it with any drill. And it's going to help them learn to stay low and learn how to create force backwards so that they move forwards rather than down so that they go up too much. One, it'll probably help their pull. But two, it's going to help them stay more level and breathe lower as they move through the water. Next up is using different training aids. So again, we talked about how awareness is key for feeling the impact of the breath. And once they can feel it, they can change it. Using different training aids can help them feel how much resistance they're creating as they move through the water. So overspeed, the faster they go, the more drag they create. The more drag they create, the more they can feel the drag. So having them go really, really fast and then practice breathing and not breathing, it's going to be more obvious how badly the poor breath will slow them down. They're going to feel all that pressure, all that resistance. By going really fast, particularly with fins, it becomes a lot more obvious. The more obvious it is, the more they can feel it, the more they can change it. The same idea happens with clothing. You have them wear a t-shirt, you have them wear shorts. They're going to feel a lot more resistance as they take that breath. And then when they take the clothing off, they're going to be more aware of how the water is flowing over their body. They can feel the difference between when they breathe and when they don't breathe. Again, feel the difference. You can start to change it. So that's what we're looking to accomplish, especially with the clothing. Weight belt. Whenever swimmers breathe, the hips are going to drop a little bit. If they've got a weight belt, the hips are going to drop a lot. So that can be really useful because, again, it creates more clarity about the impact of the breath. Whatever a loss of alignment they experience when they breathe, it's going to be a whole lot worse when they have that weight belt. So they're going to understand the consequences of their skills. When much more clarity, the more clear they are about what's happening, the easier it is for them to create change and the easier it is for them to fix those skills. So training aids can be really great regardless of what drills or activities you're doing because they help swimmers better feel the impact of the breath on their alignment and on the resistance they create as they move through the water. As with all skills, using different performance challenges can be really valuable for helping swimmers change. So have them go at different speeds, different stroke counts, different stroke rates, different combinations of the two It forces them to explore different ways of moving through the water, and that's going to help them improve their skills and help them learn to execute skills in a lot of different situations. So you want to challenge skills in many different contexts. Novelty, variety, they build skill. Just doing something different can be really useful and really powerful. More importantly, with performance challenges, it's not about going as fast as possible or taking as few strokes as possible or the fastest rate that's possible. It just has to be something that they're trying to accomplish, and you're pushing them and having them swim in different ways. So it doesn't have to be maximal. It just has to be a moderate challenge. They have to swim differently, and the more that they can be forced to swim differently, whatever it is, the more effective. And so if you're having swimmers try to go a little bit faster, that's going to affect how well they can breathe and how they breathe and what they feel when they can breathe. Same thing with higher or lower stroke rates. Same thing with the higher or lower stroke counts. So it's just a way to challenge swimmers and get them to swim differently in lots of different ways, and that can help them improve their skills. This is a great set that it really focuses on the skill of butterfly breathing. So they're going to go 3 rounds through. 425 skate drill. They're just going to descend 1 to 4. It doesn't have to be a big descend. They're just trying to go a little bit faster. Focus here, breathe on the pull, skate the chin on the surface of the water. Then they're going to go 425s, butterfly, odds or no air, evens are breathing every 3. They're going to try to be as level as possible when they're not breathing. And then when they take the breaths on the breathe every 3, they're trying to skate on the surface just like they did in the drill. Then they're going to repeat that same basic pattern 2 more times, except the skate drill they're going to build, and then they're going to go strong on the 3rd section. And they're going to go breathe every 2 and then breathe every 1 on the next full stroke butterfly sections. So we're challenging them with different breathing patterns. We've got the drill, but they're creating speed in different ways. And we're having them alternate between not breathing and regular breathing. And that's going to really help challenge them and push them to figure out the difference between the two and then try to take what they're learning during the skate drill and make that happen with the actual butterfly breathing. So we're doing our best to help them feel the key skills and then giving them the opportunity to practice those key skills. Next set, they're going to go 4 rounds. They're going to start off with dolphin kick on the surface with fins and a snorkel and a t-shirt. And that's strong effort. So the focus there is they're just being really great alignment as they move on the surface of the water. The fins add a little bit more speed. The t-shirt adds a little bit more resistance. And the snorkel allows them to not have to worry about breathing. Then they're going to go 50 butterfly with a snorkel, strong effort. They're going to try to stay as low, as level as they just did on that kick. And then we're going to add the breathing, going every other stroke on the next one. And then we're going to add the breathing every stroke on the last one. And each time they add the breath, each time they add more breaths, they're trying to stay as level, as streamlined, and as effective with the breathing as when they weren't breathing. The goal is to keep the speed the same, the effort the same, regardless of the breathing pattern. So when they add breaths, it shouldn't be slower, and they shouldn't have to try harder. They should be just as good with their alignment as they are when they're not breathing. The odd rounds, they'll do the whole thing with fins, and on the even rounds, the 350 swim are going to be without fins. The fins will allow them to create a little bit more speed, create a little bit more awareness of how they're breathing, and then they'll do it as they actually have to do it on the regular butterfly swims on the 2nd and 4th round. So creating a little bit more sensory awareness and then helping them feel how to execute those skills with or without the breath, trying to stay as level as they can and stay as consistent as they can throughout the entire set. Last set, we're going to go fast, and we're going to use the skate drill to help them really lock in the skill, help them learn how to skate that chin on the surface and breathe with the pull. They're going to go 2 swims of 8 strokes fast. The first one's no air. The second one's breathe every stroke. So we've got the contrast between being really level in the water and then trying to be really level in the water even when they're breathing. By round, we're going to use different types of resistance to help them become more aware and to better feel how they're moving through the water and the impact of the breath so that they can learn to feel and then change how they're breathing. First 2, they're with a t-shirt. Second 2, they were shorts. Last 2 were with weight belt. T-shirt's going to create more pressure on the upper body. The shorts are going to create more pressure on the legs. And then they're going to feel more resistance across the hips with the weight belt. In the last section, they have the chance to take off all the gear and just let it rip. And again, the goal is to make the difference between the breathing repetitions and the non-breathing repetitions as absolutely as small as possible. By using speed work here, we're helping them learn to execute these skills really fast. And by using the resistance, we're making it easier for them to feel how well they're breathing or how well they're not breathing, and then they have the chance to do something about that. Arm to leg timing in butterfly is the single skill that holds the whole stroke together. Without it, it becomes impossible to swim butterfly fast, and it becomes very difficult to swim butterfly at all. We're going to discuss what arm to leg timing is in butterfly, why it's important, some strategies to help improve it, and then some sets that show you how to use those strategies to actually help your swimmers get faster. We're going to cover everything you need to know about arm to leg timing in butterfly. Let's dive in. So let's get started by describing what arm to leg timing actually is in butterfly. A key point here is that in addition to providing propulsion, the leg kick, the dolphin kick, also lifts the hips up to the surface of the water. And so a strong kick is necessary to lift the hips after recovering the arms. And so by lifting the head and the chest to recover the arms, that's going to push the hips down in the water. And so the body is going to move through the surface of the water at an incline, and that's obviously going to create a lot of drag. It's a necessary movement in order to recover the arms, but we want to minimize the impact and the duration of that impact to create more speed. And we can do that by kicking when the hands enter the water, and that's going to get the hips back up to the surface. It's going to get the chest down, and that's going to allow the swimmer to reestablish horizontal alignment. That's going to reduce drag, that's going to reduce resistance, and that's going to allow for more speed. That kicking action also has the benefit of getting the hips high and the chest low, which sets swimmers up for a powerful pull when they reverse that position and start to raise the chest up in the water. That allows them to get more leverage on the water, which means a stronger and more effective pull. So that kick when the hands enter the water is critical for reestablishing horizontal alignment, as well as setting up the next stroke cycle. So as I just mentioned, the kick lifts the hips in addition to providing propulsion. And that same effect is going to be critical for the second kick. And so a strong kick is necessary to lift the hips just prior to recovering the arms. And so lifting the head and the chest is going to drive the hips down. But if the hips are down, it's going to be nearly impossible to recover the arms over the surface. So the hips need to be up at the surface to get the hands in a position where they can recover smoothly and with as little effort as possible. How's that going to happen? A strong kick. And so by kicking when the hands are exiting the water, that's going to lift the hips up. So the hands are going to be right at the surface of the water so that they can recover smoothly and easily. And so if the kick isn't strong enough or it's poorly timed, it's going to be a lot more difficult for swimmers to execute a smooth or effortless recovery. Beyond the benefits of facilitating recovery, a strong kick and a strong pull performed at the same time is going to create a lot of propulsion, a big surge in speed, which is going to help swimmers get through the recovery because there's not going to be any propulsion during that period. So they need to have as much speed as possible moving into the arm recovery. If they don't have much speed, they're really going to slow down during the arm recovery, and that's going to make the whole stroke a lot more difficult to execute. So let's take a look at these skills in action. So we'll see here, the body's at an incline right there. That's not going to be the best position to move through the water with. And so while it's necessary to recover the arms, swimmers want to get out of that position quickly. And so by recovering the arms, it gets the hips up. But if you watch there, that kick really flicks the hips up as well, and it gets the body back into alignment at the surface of the water, and that's going to help them reduce the amount of drag that they create. Now, as we see here, the chest is going to drop a little bit. The kick's going to pop the hips up, which is going to exaggerate that position. And then when the swimmer decides to pull, that pull is going to bring them up out of the position. And by coming up at an angle, they're able to create more torque, more leverage on the water, and they're going to get a stronger pull. So that first kick when the hands enter is critical to, one, get the hips up in the beginning of the stroke, and then two, set up a powerful pull so that swimmers can create a lot of propulsion when they do pull. Now, if we watch the second kick here, you can see he's starting to come up, but those hips are a little bit low. And watch the kick here. You can see right there, those hips rise up to the surface, and it's going to be much easier for him to recover the arms. So we'll watch how much the hips elevate here. So from this position all the way through the kick up to there, it's a much higher position in the water, which is going to make it much easier to recover the arms over the surface. So we'll watch the whole thing one more time. You can see that incline of the body position and the body alignment. And then they're going to try to get out of that. They're going to kick there. That's going to pop the hips up, get him back into alignment, and then set up this pull here. And then the second kick is going to pop the hips up to the surface, make it much easier to recover the arms. And so the arm to leg timing is key. The legs have to kick when the arms enter to reestablish alignment and get the pull set up. And then the kick has to happen when the arms exit in order to create a smooth and effective recovery. If butterflies are missing out on one or both of these kicks, it's going to be really, really, really difficult to swim effective butterfly simply because they're really going to struggle to minimize resistance and they're going to struggle to create a lot of propulsion. So making sure that the arms and the legs are working in concert, they're doing the right thing at the right time is key for fast butterfly. So let's reiterate why arm to leg timing is so important in butterfly. First of all, it facilitates effective arm recoveries. If the hips are underwater when swimmers are trying to recover the arms, it's just not going to work. They're going to either drag the arms through the water or they're going to have to really lift and pull the arms over the surface, which is going to be exhausting. In either case, more work for less speed. Kick timing also facilitates better alignment. If the hips don't come up at the front of the stroke, that means more drag and less speed. A strong kick upon entry can solve that problem by getting everything back into alignment. Lastly, great timing facilitates more propulsion. With high hips and a low chest, swimmers can create more leverage with the pull. They can go from low to high and really get on top of it. And then combining the kick and the finish of the pull creates a lot of speed heading into the arm recovery where there's not going to be any propulsion. So it's critical that swimmers accelerate as much as possible. So arm to leg timing really is key for the entire stroke because it allows for recoveries, it allows for better alignment, and then it also allows for more propulsion, which is everything swimmers need in order to go fast. So whereas a mediocre pull can produce mediocre results, so what makes arm to leg timing difficult for swimmers to learn in butterfly? First, the stroke doesn't work if the timing isn't right. Swimmers get in a situation where they can't practice effective butterfly because they can't get the timing right, and they can't get the timing right because they can't practice effective butterfly. Butterfly is particularly challenging in that respect. Timing is also all about precision. It's about doing the right thing at the right time, and a fraction too early or a fraction too late doesn't necessarily work. So while a moderately effective pull is going to create a moderate amount of propulsion, moderately effective timing isn't going to produce much of anything at all. It either has to be right or it doesn't really work. From a coaching standpoint, timing is also difficult to describe. It's not a specific action, it's more about the relationship between different actions. And so it's hard to tell swimmers, do this with your arm, do this with your leg, because it's about doing multiple things at exactly the right time. Lastly, timing changes slightly with speed. And so there's not necessarily a perfect timing. There's a perfect timing for a certain swimmer in a certain context. And so that makes it even more difficult because it's hard to be really prescriptive because swimmers are going to have to learn to adapt their timing depending on what they're trying to do. For all these reasons, it can be difficult to help swimmers learn effective arm to leg timing. Having discussed what timing is, why it matters, and the challenge of learning timing, let's get into the solutions. So we're going to go over a couple drills that I find to be really effective for helping swimmers improve their butterfly timing. We're going to go over a couple training strategies that can be really helpful for improving timing. And we'll go over 3 different sets that you can use as a starting point to either implement or modify to help swimmers start improving their timing. So as I mentioned earlier, learning butterfly can be challenging because they have to practice the stroke to get the timing right, and they got to get the timing right to practice the stroke. And if they can't figure it out, it becomes difficult to get the work in to try to figure it. And that can create a frustrating cycle, which limits progress. One of my favorite strategies is using one-arm butterfly because it breaks that cycle. It allows swimmers to practice butterfly in a less demanding situation. It reduces the recovery demand, but it maintains the rhythm of the stroke. And so swimmers can learn effective timing without having to swim full stroke. They can focus on kicking when the hands enter and kicking when the hands exit, and they can do that in a way that's very similar to regular butterfly. And once they're able to figure out the timing with one-arm butterfly, it's a lot easier to transition into regular butterfly. And once they can swim regular butterfly, they can really figure out the timing while actually swimming butterfly. I like to use both arm up variations and arm down. And what I mean by that is the non-working arm can be held up in front of the head, or it can be held down by the side. And when it's down by the side, there's going to be more undulation to the stroke. And when it's up in front of the head, it's going to be a flatter stroke. Both are effective. It's just a little bit different. So here's a quick example of one-arm butterfly. And you can see with this swimmer, kicking when the hands exit and kicking when the hands enter. So it's the same basic rhythm as regular butterfly without the recovery demands. And that provides them with the opportunity to learn effective kick timing within the actual rhythm of the stroke. So this is the arm down version. And as you'll see, there's a little bit more undulation to the stroke, and that extra undulation provides a little bit more variety, and it provides a different feel as compared to the arm up version. And if swimmers are having trouble getting enough undulation, this can be a more effective option. If swimmers are undulating too much, you probably want to go with the hand up version. So to recap one-arm butterfly, it allows swimmers to practice effective timing within the rhythm of regular butterfly, but at a much lower demand because both arms aren't recovering over the water. It's just one arm recovering over the water. And you can change the drill a little bit by either having the hand up in front of the head or down at the hips. Down by the hips, they'll get a little bit more undulation. And when the hand's up in front of the head, it's going to be a slightly flatter stroke. When swimmers are struggling with their timing, this can be a great place to start, and it can create a great foundation for effective timing while swimming full stroke butterfly. The next drill I like to use is head up butterfly. And so as we talked about earlier, the second kick when the hands are exiting the water gets the hips up so that the arms can be recovered. So if we want to encourage a stronger kick, what we can do is drive the hips down further. That's going to challenge swimmers to get even harder to get the hips back up to the surface to allow for a smooth recovery. How do you do that? You have them swim with the head up. The hips are going to be lower, and swimmers are going to struggle to recover the arms. As a result, they're going to have to kick harder and at the right time to get the hips back up on the surface. So rather than telling them to kick strongly or kick at the right time, simply exaggerate the challenge, and that's going to push swimmers to a harder and better timed kick. So if swimmers lift the head up, it's going to push the hips down, and if the hips are down, they're going to have to kick harder and more effectively in order to get the arms recovered smoothly over the surface. So just by lifting the head, we can really encourage a better timed and more effective kick when the hands are exiting the water. So if you watch here, he's going to have a really strong second kick because he's got to do whatever he can to get the hips up at the surface of the water. And so just by lifting the head, we can really encourage more effective timing and a stronger kick because swimmers have to have a strong kick. They have to time it well in order to recover the arms. And so it's a simple way to get the change we want without having to provide a lot of instruction. So having seen it in action, you can see how that second kick is going to be really strong, really powerful, and swimmers are going to instinctively execute it at the right time because if they don't, they're not going to be able to recover the arms. And the challenge of recovering the arms is going to be great feedback. It's going to let them know if they're being successful or not, and it's going to do so immediately. So they really start to figure out how hard they have to kick and when they have to kick by keeping the head up. In terms of a more generalized training strategy, one thing I really like for improving butterfly timing is adding resistance. And so the resistance builds more awareness while also increasing the challenge of recovering the arms effectively. And so there's two ways to do this. You can either use resisted swimming or you can use drag socks. They're both effective and they have a different impact. So with resisted swimming, especially with a parachute, the hips are almost always pulled down. And so swimmers are going to have to create more propulsion to move forward, and they're going to have to be more precise with their timing. Their kicks are also going to have to be more effective to get the hips back up to the surface of the water, and that's going to encourage a stronger kick and a better timed kick. So by making things more difficult, swimmers are going to have to be more forceful with their kicks, and they're going to have to time those kicks better in order to make forward progress down the pool. Drag socks can be particularly useful because they can help swimmers feel their feet and the impact of the timing. Having the resistance on the feet creates a lot more awareness of where the feet are and what they're actually doing. For swimmers that are struggling to feel what their kick is doing, this can be really helpful. The drag socks also make it more difficult to move the feet through the water, so swimmers are going to have to be more forceful with their kicking, and they're going to have to be better with their timing because if they're a little bit late, they're a little bit early, if they're not executing it right, they're not going to be able to easily correct because it's a lot more difficult to move the foot through the water. So they're going to have to be more effective with their kicking, and they're going to have to be more precise with their kicking. So resistance can be really difficult because it helps to build awareness of the impact of the kick, and it also makes it more difficult to execute great kick timing. For both those reasons, adding resistance can be a really powerful strategy for improving arm to leg timing in butterfly. Another really effective strategy is adding fins. And just like with adding resistance, it can help swimmers become more aware of what their feet are doing and the impact of the kick. A lot of swimmers don't have great awareness, they can't really feel what their feet are doing, and they can't feel the impact of an effective kick. And so for swimmers that are struggling, fins can dramatically increase awareness of the feet, and then once they have more awareness, they can start to influence what they're doing, which is going to help them better use the kick and better time the kick to facilitate great butterfly. Fins also provide a novel stimulus. They help swimmers feel effective timing in a totally different way, and they're really going to be aware of the impact of the kick because the kick is going to be a lot more effective when wearing fins. And so for those that can't really feel it, that really struggle, using fins can help them lock in on effective timing, and it can help them feel how kicking can shift hip position, which can in turn power the rest of the stroke. Fins also allow swimmers to practice these skills at faster speeds. And so for swimmers that can execute pretty solid timing at slower speeds but struggle at faster speeds, fins can be really useful for helping them figure out how to make it happen when swimming fast. And again, this provides a novel stimulus, novelty, variety. They're both really valuable and really important for facilitating improvement in skill. And the third strategy, which I use for almost all skill development, is to ask for performance. And so you want to use stroke counts, you want to use stroke rates, you want to use speed, and you want to use them in different combinations to push and challenge swimmers to find ways to swim better even when they're using drills. So you can use the drills, you can use the sensory activities and then perform. So for instance, you can have them do 350s one-arm butterfly and then do 250s butterfly descend by round, or you can actually have them perform during the drills, during the sensory activities themselves. So 3 100s one-arm butterfly, they're going to descend 1 to 3 at the same stroke count, and then 2 25s butterfly. So by challenging swimmers to change stroke counts, to change speed, to change stroke rate, they necessarily have to swim differently. And when they're doing that with drills, that's going to help them explore and find different solutions. And by doing that with either drills or full stroke swimming, that's going to force them to explore. And when they explore, they're a lot more likely to find effective solutions. They find effective solutions, they're going to improve their skills, and they're going to go faster. So here's the first set for arm to leg timing in butterfly. They're going to go 3 rounds through this. They're going to start off with 250s, 1-arm butterfly. They're going to build both 25s. First one arm by the side, second one's arm in front. Then they're going to go 225s head up butterfly with fins, then 225s butterfly with fins. Then they're going to go 425s where they go 3 cycles of head up butterfly and then swim butterfly into the wall. Then they're going to go 225s butterfly solid effort. So we're using our 2 drills here. We're using fins. We're having them build some of the 25s. We're challenging them in different ways. The goal is to find the rhythm of the stroke on those 250s, and then we'll exaggerate that strong second kick on the 225s. They'll try to figure it out and apply that second kick on the next 225s, and then on the final 625s, without the added benefit of the fins, they're going to establish a strong second kick on those first 3 cycles of head up butterfly, and then they're going to try to maintain that strong second kick all the way into the wall, 225s to put it all together. So this is more of a skill-based set. There's not a huge challenge from a physical perspective, but it allows swimmers to explore and feel effective timing in lots of different ways. Our next set is going to be a little bit more of an endurance focus, so they're going to go 4 125s as 1-arm butterfly plus 25 butterfly. They're going to descend 1 to 4 at the same stroke count, so they're going to find that rhythm on the 1 arm. They're going to try to apply that during the 25, and they're going to get faster as they go for each 125, but they can't take more strokes. They got to be more effective with each stroke. And the better they do with the timing, the more likely it is that they'll make that happen. Then 425s butterfly solid effort. We're going to apply that great timing. Just let it happen on those 25s. Then 675s as 51 arm 25 butterfly. They're going to descend 1 to 3, 4 to 6 at the same stroke count. It's the same idea as the 4 125s, except now there's more butterfly as a percentage of the total volume. Then they're going to go 425s butterfly stronger effort. Again, try to execute that same timing. Then they're going to go 825s 1-arm butterfly. They're going to build those to fast, and then finish up with 425s butterfly strongest effort. So we're really putting some stress on the 1 arm. We're allowing them to do it in a little bit more of an endurance context, and we're expecting them to get faster, but they can't take more strokes when they do so. Then on all those 25s butterfly, they got to put it together, they got to figure it out, they got to find a way to make it work. Our final set here is more of a speed set. They're going to go 6 cycles of head up butterfly with drag socks and fins. That's going to really stress that second kick, and they're going to have to work really hard with the fins and the drag socks to overcome that resistance. They're going to have to put a lot into the kick, and they're going to have to be really precise with the timing to make it all work. Then they're going to go 25 butterfly, drag socks, and fins, minimize stroke count and time. So they're trying to be fast and long, and they have to execute great timing to make that happen. Then we're going to repeat that again with just the drag socks, and then we're going to repeat that again without any drag socks. Finish the round off with a 25 butterfly fast where they just try to make it happen. So as we go through this set, they're challenged to execute an effective second kick with the head up butterfly. Then they're going to try to apply that on the 25 butterfly, and they're going to minimize stroke count and time to really put more pressure on effective timing because they got to be long and they got to be fast. We'll change the gear to give them a little bit different feel, and then we'll finish each round by going really, really fast. So we're going to challenge swimmers in a bunch of ways to really make sure that they're being really effective with their kick timing. So effective arm to leg timing in butterfly is all about getting the hips up at the right time to facilitate a really smooth stroke. The kick needs to happen when the hands enter to get everything back in line and set up for the pull. And the kick needs to happen when the hands exit so that the hips can be up at the surface to facilitate a smooth recovery. It's simple in concept, but it can be difficult for swimmers to learn because of the challenge of recovering the arms. And if the timing is not quite right, butterfly can be really hard to perform. And so in order to help swimmers get to the point where they can swim full stroke butterfly well, 1-arm butterfly can be really effective because it simplifies the stroke. It allows swimmers to practice the right timing without having to worry about recovering both arms. As swimmers advance and you really want to put more stress on the second kick, head up butterfly can be really useful because it pushes the hips down. And so swimmers have to work really hard to get the hips back up to recover the arms. That means a stronger, better timed kick. And we can put more pressure on all these skills by using resistance, and we can further facilitate that process by using fins. Arm to leg timing is a key skill in butterfly, and now you have a better sense of what it is and how to improve it. There's a lot going on when the hands enter the water in butterfly, and if swimmers don't get it right, it can be very difficult to swim fast and sustainable fly. On the other hand, if swimmers can do the right thing at the right time, it's going to unlock speed and endurance that's going to help them swim much faster in races. It's all about organizing several key skills at the same time so that swimmers can create speed. We're going to discuss why entry timing is so critical in butterfly. We're going to discuss what it is. We're going to take a look at what it is. We're going to go over why it's difficult to improve. We're going to go over how to improve it. And then I'll show you some sets that you can use to help implement these concepts. Entry timing is so important because it's the key aspect of butterfly timing. It syncs up the whole stroke and it makes everything else so much easier. When the entry timing is effective, the arms are going to be in the right position, the legs are going to be in the right position, the hips are going to be in the right position, and that means swimmers are going to be able to create more propulsion and they're going to create less resistance. And if they don't get that right, everything's going to be out of position and it's very, very difficult to get back into position throughout the remainder of the stroke. That means more resistance, less propulsion, a whole lot less speed for a whole lot more effort. And entry timing all centers around the role of the hips. And the hips need to come back up for an effective fly. When swimmers breathe, when they recover the arms, the hips are necessarily going to drop a little bit. The body is going to be at an angle, and so the hips need to come back up so the body can be level, and that means there's going to be less resistance because swimmers are going to be swimming straight through the water. And if the hips are high and the chest is low, if swimmers reverse that, it allows them to get a lot more leverage on the water, create a lot more propulsion with the upper body. So if swimmers can get the hips up more effectively, they're going to have more speed for less effort, and that's going to mean better endurance, and that's going to mean faster swimming. So what is great entry timing? Ultimately, it's quite simple. There are three things that need to happen all at the same time. The arms need to come around and enter forward. That's why we're talking about entry timing. That's going to be a key aspect of it. The chest needs to drop down, and then there needs to be a strong kick. And all those actions serve to pop the hips up. When the chest goes down, just like a teeter-totter, the hips go up. When the legs kick, that pushes the hips up from behind, and then when the arms enter, that's going to get more body mass out in front, and the arms are swinging with a lot of momentum, which is going to further carry everything forwards, and that's going to get those hips to pop up too. And so if you get a strong chest press and a strong kick, and the arms are swung forward aggressively all at the same time, all of a sudden those hips are going to pop right up, and they're going to pop up faster, they're going to pop up easier, and they're going to pop up better. By better, I mean a more effective position. So that means swimmers can get into better positions, they can get into better positions faster, and they can get into better positions with less effort. And that all means really great speed. And so if swimmers were to execute all of those three skills, arms forward, chest down, strong kick, at different times, it's not going to be the same synergistic effect, and they're not going to get the hips up as fast, as easy, and as well. So if swimmers can execute great entry timing well, they're going to be able to get into better positions, and they're going to swim faster. So we'll take a look at two different swimmers here, one swimming over 100 meters and one swimming over 200 meters. So we watch here. So the hands are going to enter right there. The chest presses, and then the legs are kicking, and everything clicks right there. So when you get the full chest press, you get the finish of the kick, and the arms are all the way out in front, everything just pops up. So instead of telling swimmers to get their hips up, you can just focus on the entry timing and do the skills that allow the hips to come up. Trying to move the hips isn't going to be effective. Executing what needs to happen that gets the hips up is going to work a lot better. So again, those arms are going to crash down, the chest is crashing down, everything's moving forward as the kick goes, and then boom, those hips come right up into line, right up into position. And so it's a really simple skill that just needs to be done at the right time. Boom, right there, kick, entry, press, and those hips are right in a position. And then the chest is down a little bit, the hips are up, and then boom, he can leverage right out of that and really rock the pole. So simple skill that just needs to be done at the right time. It's not complicated. It's something anyone can learn. It just needs to be done well, and it just needs to be timed well. So different swimmer here. What we'll see is the chest drops, the arms enter, and then boom, that kick pops those hips right up into line. So this athlete's got a little bit more of a chest press. The hips are getting up a little bit higher. There's more range of motion, but it's the same principles. So again, arms come around, boom, enter, chest press, kick, everything pops up right into alignment. So simple skill just needs to be executed with precision, and it needs to be executed well, and those hips are going to come right up. Swimmers aren't going to have to focus on making it happen. One more example here. See the kick there, and then the enter and the chest press all happen at the same time. So right, kicking, entering, chest press, boom, she gets her hips right up on the surface. So right there, all happening together. That gets her in a great position. Hips are up. It allows her to maintain a great alignment, and it allows her to get ready to come up and out of that pole to create a lot of propulsion. Simple skill, just needs to be executed with precision. If swimmers can do that, butterfly becomes a whole lot easier and a whole lot faster. So what's the challenge? Why isn't each and every swimmer making this happen? Well, butterfly happens fast. It can't be performed slowly, and that makes it a lot more difficult for swimmers to practice and learn that skill. It's also a skill that needs to be precise, and it's really subtle, and that can be really difficult for swimmers to figure out, to pick up on when they have to do things fast and they have to do things with a lot of effort. In swimming butterfly, you can't just swing the arms nice and leisurely and try to feel it out and try to figure out how to get those hands in position at the right time with the chest press and the kick. And that makes it a lot more difficult for swimmers to feel out that nuance, to figure out that precision, and to execute that subtle skill. The arms are also swinging forward ballistically. And so while you can recover the arms in freestyle nice and leisurely, and you can change the timing if you have to, once those arms are swinging in butterfly, there's not a whole lot swimmers can do. By that point, whatever's going to happen is going to happen. And so it's difficult for swimmers to figure out what they need to do earlier in the stroke in order to make the entry itself happen effectively, especially when they have to do it at speed and they can't stop, slow down, control, and try to figure things out and try to feel things out. It's also a matter of coordination. They've got to do 3 different things all at the same time, and that can be difficult for swimmers to think about. It's like juggling 3 different balls. If they focus on one, they lose track of another. And so, again, that's made more difficult by butterfly itself because it can't be performed particularly slowly. And with the ballistic nature of the arm recovery, it's hard to figure out all 3 skills at the same time when swimmers have to do it. In most cases, they have to figure out under pressure, and they have to figure it out when they're swimming relatively tired because butterfly can be challenging. And especially if they don't have good entry timing, butterfly will be really challenging. So a lot of things that need to be overcome in order to help swimmers learn this critical skill. For solutions, we have to overcome the challenges we just discussed. We have to find a way to slow butterfly down without ruining the timing of the stroke. We also have to find a way to help swimmers navigate those ballistic recoveries in a way that they can manage, and we have to find a way to help swimmers learn to coordinate these 3 separate actions. Or we need to find strategies that almost force swimmers to coordinate those actions effectively, so that way they can figure out what it feels like and how to do it. So especially relative to the other strokes, which can be performed across a range of speeds and a range of stroke rates, butterfly is a lot more restricted in that respect. And if we can solve that challenge, we can work around that, we're much more likely to help swimmers figure out how to execute great entry time. The first strategy is called skate drill, and it's effective because it's a good introduction to the skill. It's really isolated. The rhythm of the stroke really isn't there, but the arm recoveries aren't there. That makes it a lot easier to help swimmers learn how to time the chest press, the forward reach of the arms, and that kick. They can go slow, they can control it, they can get a lot of repetitions in without getting tired, and they can do so in a way that's conducive to learning, especially if they have no idea how to make it happen. Here's a way to help them figure out what it feels like. And because things are happening under less pressure, swimmers can experiment, they can feel it out, they can learn what works and what doesn't. More importantly, they can start to feel the pop of the hips when everything really works, when everything really clicks. And once they can feel it in this isolated context, it's more likely that they'll be able to feel it when actually swimming butterfly, because if they can't feel it in isolation, they're not just going to magically discover it when they're swimming fly. So what the swimmer is doing here is they're going to focus on having the arms out in front. At the same time, they're going to reach forward, they're going to press, they're going to drive that kick, and that's going to pop those hips up right there, and then they're going to pull. So that's the key aspect of it, is the hands are in front, there's the press of the chest, there's the kick, and then there's the pull all at the same time. And so while they're not actually recovering the arms and entering the arms, they're still going to reach forward, press the chest, and then pop the kick in order to make that happen. So it's a simple way to help swimmers feel how those 3 actions get the hips up right there in the front of the stroke. And then that allows them to feel that. And once they can feel it, they can start to execute it in regular butterfly. Next up is one-arm butterfly. And so the advantage here, especially relative to skate drill, is that it allows for the continuous rhythm of butterfly. Swimmers can get 2 kicks in, the arms are recovering over the water, it's a continuous motion, but now it can be slowed down because swimmers don't have to recover the arms ballistically, they can do so patiently, and it can still be performed correctly because the accurate and the true rhythm is still there. So what's really valuable is it can be performed across a range of speeds. So you can do it really slow to help swimmers figure out the timing, and you can also do it fast and challenge their timing as well. It's a lot less physically demanding because only one arm is going over the surface at a time, and so it doesn't require a lot of strength. So if swimmers are lacking that to some extent, they can still learn the key skills and the key timing, and they can get a lot more practice because it's not going to be as physically exhausting. as I mentioned earlier, it's a perfect transition from skate drill to full stroke butterfly because swimmers can now work on that same timing, but they've added the arm recovery over the water, and each stroke cycle is going to flow into the next, just like with regular butterfly. So if we watch here, what we'll see is with each stroke, he's going to enter the water, the hips come up, chest goes down. You can see the legs are down because he's just completed that kick. And so he can practice that skill at slower speeds with a lot more patience. He doesn't have to worry about the arms recovering over the water. He can do 50s, he can do 100s, he can do whatever and get a lot of practice rather than just having to force it and try to figure it out. So he's keeping his tempo up a little bit here. It can be a lot slower, it can be a lot patient, and it can certainly be faster than that too. And that helps swimmers learn to execute this skill in a lot of different contexts. It's a great transition, a great setup for full stroke butterfly. Another strategy for swimmers that are a little bit more advanced, that are still struggling with this skill, or if you really want to make this skill bulletproof, you can use head up butterfly. So what happens, head goes up, hips go down, and so that forces swimmers to be really strong with their kick when they enter, because if they're not, those hips aren't going to come up at all, and they're going to be in big trouble. And so they have to kick hard, they have to kick at the right time to get the hips up just a little bit, nowhere near what they would in regular butterfly, but they're going to have to kick harder and at the right time in order to make that happen. So we're really overloading that first kick here because the swimmers are sloppy with it. They won't go anywhere with head up butterfly, and it'll be a real challenge. They won't create speed, and they're going to get exhausted. And when they put the head back down, they're going to feel the hips come up really well each time because with the head up fly, they're not going to be coming up much at all. And so they're going to be able to feel that difference between when their head's up and the head's down. They're going to feel a difference in where the hip position is. And when they can feel those differences, now they have more awareness. The more awareness they have, the more change they can create. So if swimmers can swim butterfly pretty well and they've got some solid strength, this can be a great tool to make that skill even better because, again, it forces them to exaggerate that kick and the timing of the kick. And further, when the head goes back down, they're going to be more aware. They're going to be able to feel the hips moving. And the more they can feel it, the more they can influence it. So if you watch here, head's going to be up, body position is going to be down, but you can still see those hips pop up a little bit in the front of the stroke. And that's going to be driven by a really, really strong kick because nothing's going to happen if he doesn't kick strong, he doesn't kick at the right time. Then once the head goes back down and he's swimming regular, those hips are going to come up right where we want them, and they're going to come up a whole lot easier because he's using that really strong kick and he's executing it at the right time. So of course, the kick is a huge aspect of entry timing, and by modifying the feet, we can help swimmers feel the kick differently, and if we can help them feel it differently, we can help them improve the skill. And so the kick timing is a challenge for many swimmers, and they just can't feel it because there's not a whole lot of surface area with the feet, and lesser skilled swimmers aren't particularly effective at using the feet, and so they're not going to get a lot of pressure. They don't have much pressure on the feet. It's going to be difficult for them to become aware of what the feet are doing. So we got two strategies here. First is fins, and that bigger surface area can help swimmers really feel the pressure on the foot, can feel the impact of the kick, and they're much more likely to get a bigger hip pop when they do kick because they're going to be moving a whole lot more water. The more water they push down, the more the hips are going to go up. And then that means it's more likely they're actually going to feel it when the timing clicks because those hips are going to come right up and they're going to feel that surge, that sense of speed when they get back into alignment, and they're going to feel the power of the pull when they come out of that. Drag socks, same concept, but they work a little bit differently. They're going to help swimmers feel more pressure on the feet. They're going to be more aware of what their kick is doing and when it's happening. And that awareness makes it more likely that they're going to be able to tell how to execute the kick when it matters. Just as importantly, like with head up fly, they're going to have to work harder to kick. And so the harder they work, the more it's going to put the skill under pressure. And when they take the drag socks off, it's going to be a whole lot easier for them to make that happen. And they're going to have the fitness to sustain that skill for that much longer. And so it's a really great way to help them feel what their kick's doing. And once they can feel it, they can change it. Another effective strategy is using resistance. And again, it's all about creating awareness. When they wear the belt, they're going to be more aware of the hips because there's going to be all that extra mass moving all over the place, and they're going to feel that, and they're going to feel the difficulty of moving that as well. And just like with the head up butterfly, you take the weight belt off, now they're going to be able to feel those hips slide right into place, and they're going to have more strength, more control over what they're doing as well. With the parachute, it's the same concept, just a little bit different mechanism. That chute's going to pull those hips down as well. So swimmers are going to have to work harder, kick more effectively, get the timing better in order to get the hips back up and back into alignment. Again, when the parachute comes off, they're going to feel those hips pop right up into place. And so both these strategies help swimmers feel whether the hips move and whether they move at the right time and in the right way. They have to work harder to make it happen. And at the same time, they also have to be more precise to make it happen. And so this might not be the first strategy you use when introducing the skill and the concept, but once you want to challenge that skill, challenge that concept a little bit, resistance tools are extremely effective. With all skills, I like to challenge performance. And so you can change the speed, you can change the stroke rate. You can have them go as slow as possible with speed and rate. You can have them go as fast as possible with speed and rate. Especially with the drills, when you have them go slow, it's going to force them to really get it right, because if they don't, they're going to have a real hard time maintaining control, maintaining their alignment, maintaining forward speed. And when they have to do it at high speeds, they're going to have a lot less time. They're going to have to be really good, really precise in how they execute in order to do everything right in a lot less time. And of course, you can do the whole range in between, and you can bounce back and forth within that range. And so if swimmers can execute these skills when they're going really slow and when they're going really fast, they're going to be able to execute those skills pretty much at any time. So rather than just having swimmers perform the drills at whatever speed is comfortable for them, push them out of their comfort zone, force them to change, force them to learn, and that's going to help their progress. So first set is simple enough. They're going to go 2 rounds through this. They're going to go 825 skate drill. They're going to alternate 2 with fins, 2 with drag socks, and then they're going to go 4 rounds of a 51 arm butterfly, descend 1 to 4, and a 50 butterfly solid. So with the skate drill, it's an introduction to this skill, and they're going to use fins and they're going to use drag socks in order to create more awareness of what the feet are doing. The fins are going to help them pop the hips up, and the drag socks are going to make it more difficult for that to happen. So you're going to alternate between the two. They get a change in sensation, and that extra variation is going to help them learn. Then they're going to transition into some one-arm butterflies, so now they've got the full stroke rhythm, and they're going to try to add speed as they go. They've got to try to execute with that same timing, and they've got to make that happen faster and faster in order to go faster. And then they've got 25 butterfly. It's just a test. Can they make it happen with regular butterfly? They're not looking to be perfect. They're looking to be a little bit better. In each round, each section, each time they repeat those 25 flies, they want to see if they can get better. 2 rounds through the whole thing, give them an opportunity to figure out both pieces 2 times. This set is a little bit longer. They're going to go 2 or 3 rounds through, depending on how much work you want to do. We're going to go 225s head up butterfly with fins, solid effort. So the fins are going to make it more obvious what the kick's doing. It's also going to make it a little bit easier to swim head up butterfly. So swimmers are going to have to be effective with the kick, hit the timing, hit it really well to make sure that those hips come up. Those are going to be solid effort. And then they're going to go right into a 200 as 25 one-arm butterfly smooth. So really just feel it out, really great timing, and right into a 25 butterfly strong where they try to execute that same timing. Then they're going to repeat those 225s, and they're going to repeat a 150 instead of a 200, done the same way, but the one-arm butterfly should be solid effort now, and the 25 butterfly should be strong. Repeat the 225s again, and then we're going to go 100. The one-arm butterfly is strong, and the 25 butterfly is strong. They're going to have to be really strong with those kicks on the head-up butterfly, and they're going to try to make it happen during those longer swims. We're going to set it up with the one arm. They have a chance to recover a little bit physically, but just as importantly, to set things up technically and then try to make it happen during the 25s butterfly. Last set, more of a speed set. They're going to go 4 rounds through this. They're going to start off with 5 cycles of head-up butterfly fast, and then a 25 one-arm butterfly, minimize stroke count on time. They'll do that twice for 4 total repetitions. Then they're going to go 25 butterfly, minimize stroke count on time, and a 25 butterfly fast. So the head-up butterfly, again, just like with the previous set, put the legs under more pressure. They're going to have to kick well and kick at the same time in order to get everything up and in line. Then the 25 one-arm butterfly, it's a little bit less pressure because they don't have both arms recovering, but they have to create speed and length at the same time. Then they're going to do the same thing with butterfly. Again, minimize stroke count and time, and then a 25 butterfly fast. So with the head-up fly, the one-arm fly, and the first 25 butterfly, they're going to be using different resistance each round. Round 1's with a weight belt, round 2's with drag socks, round 3's with parachute, round 4's with no equipment. And that last 25 butterfly fast is always without equipment. The idea here, the weight belt, we're going to challenge them to get the hips up. The drag socks, they have to be really effective with the kicking. The parachute, they've got to be really good with getting the hips up. Then they get the chance to put it all together again. So we're challenging the skills in a lot of different ways. We're doing it in a training context so that they can develop fitness and skill at the same time, and that's going to lead to better outcomes. They're going to develop the skill. They're going to do it in a way that actually shows up in races, and they're going to have the fitness to hold it all together. One of the reasons butterfly swimming is so difficult for so many swimmers is that both arms need to be recovered over the surface of the water at the same time. That requires a lot of different skills to all line up at the same time, or else swimmers are really going to struggle to do so effectively and efficiently. And especially as swimmers are young, when they're learning these skills, it can be really difficult to do things well, and they develop skills that impair their speed throughout the rest of their career. Let's fix that. Poor butterfly arm recoveries can make butterfly a whole lot more difficult, and more importantly, it can make it slower. If swimmers can improve their butterfly arm recoveries, they're going to be able to swim faster and they're going to be able to sustain their speed over longer periods of time because the stroke demands less energy. In this video, we're going to take a look at why arm recoveries are important, what are effective arm recoveries, the challenges of improving the arm recovery, and then several strategies for getting the job done. Let's check it out. Arm recoveries matter for three main reasons. The first is alignment, the second is propulsion, and the third one is effort. So from an alignment perspective, the arm recoveries will directly impact body position. If the arm recoveries are extremely low and they even drag through the water, that's going to create a lot more resistance as well. And so swimmers have to find the sweet spot that allows them to maintain an effective body position and allows them to maintain a profile that keeps resistance low, or else they're going to run into trouble. And so the arm should be recovered in a way that allows swimmers to keep the body in line as much as possible. The arm recoveries are also important for propulsion as well, because if the arms are crashing in, the arms are crashing together, the arms are entering really wide, all those issues are going to make it a lot more difficult to set up the stroke. And if the stroke can't be set up well, that's going to negatively impact the pull, and it's pretty much downhill from there. And so the recoveries set up the beginning of the stroke, and the rest of the stroke follows from how well that recovery is set up. Lastly, the more fatiguing, the more challenging, the more difficult the arm recoveries are, the harder it's going to be to sustain that speed. And so the recoveries are already difficult. The goal is to recover the arms in a way that minimizes the amount of effort that's used to get them over the surface of the water. The less effort that's required, the less effort that's needed, the more that swimmers are going to be able to sustain their speed over any race distance. So what are effective arm recoveries? Unfortunately, it's difficult to say exactly how a swimmer should recover their arms. However, there are certain things that we're looking to accomplish. The recoveries should be as fast as possible, as direct as possible, and as effortless as possible. We don't want to see any loss of speed. We don't want to see any loss of alignment. We don't want to see any loss of propulsion, and we want as little effort as possible. Now, of course, when the arms are recovering, swimmers are going to slow down because they're not applying propulsion. However, that loss of speed, the goal is to have zero, and we're trying to get it as close to that as possible. Same thing with the loss of alignment. When the head's up, the shoulders are up out of the water, there's going to be a loss of alignment. How small can that loss be? And the smaller it is, the better. And as we just mentioned, the arm recoveries are going to influence the entry and therefore the pull itself. And so we don't want arm recoveries that compromise those motions, that compromise the subsequent pull. And of course, the less energy that swimmers can use, the less effort they have to use to accomplish all these goals, the better they're going to be able to hang on to their skills. And so in terms of the actual recoveries, we're looking for just right. If the recoveries are too high, if the recoveries are too low, that's going to disrupt alignment. And then in terms of width, we want not too wide, not too narrow, and that's more in terms of where the recoveries end upon entry. If they're too wide, it's going to be difficult to set up the stroke. If they're too narrow, it's going to be difficult to set up the stroke. Then finally, the finish of the pull needs to be not too long, not too short. Now, why is that the case? If the pull is too long, it's going to be really difficult to get the hands out and recover them smoothly and effortlessly. And if the pull is too short, swimmers might be able to swing their arms out pretty easily, but they're going to be compromising the pull itself, and that's not going to set them up for more speed. And so for all swimmers, it's about finding the happy medium. But of course, it's different for different swimmers because they all have different attributes. They've got different levels of strength, mobility, and they've got different lengths of their arms. And those factors all interact. They all impact exactly what the most optimal recovery should be for each swimmer. So if you watch here, what you'll see is that the arms are coming up at different heights. The body's coming up at different heights. The elbows are maybe a little bit more bent, a little bit less bent. They're swinging in at slightly different points. And so while you see the same basic themes in terms of staying relatively low to the water, keeping the arms relatively straight, entering about shoulder width, there are some differences in terms of what athletes are actually doing. And so that's what we need to pay attention to, is how can we not only help swimmers execute on these basic principles, but how can they find the most optimal arm recovery for them that allows them to create the most speed with the least amount of effort. Now, if we watch from under the surface, what we will see here is more or less they're going to be entering shoulder width. But you can see even these two swimmers, there's a little bit different width. And so it's finding what's going to be optimal for each swimmer. And the other aspect of it too, if you watch the pull, they're not going to finish with straight arms in the back of the stroke. The elbows are going to be bent when they exit the water, like right there on the right and right there on the left. And then the arms go straight after the arms exit the water. And that's going to allow them to find, again, it's not too long. They're not straightening the arms. That's going to make it really hard to recover. And they're also not pulling out early. They're getting way past the hips on these pulls as well. And so it's finding the optimal width and how long the pull should be in order to help swimmers figure out what's going to be the best way to recover the arms. Again, to keep speed as high as possible with as little effort as possible. So what's the challenge here? The first big challenge is nuance. Small changes can have a large impact, and swimmers have to be able to feel and control this nuance. Subtle changes in depth, subtle changes in width, subtle changes in the length of the finish can all add up. It can add to losses of speed or gains of speed or increases or decreases in effort. And so swimmers have to be able to perceive, they have to be able to feel, they have to be aware of these differences so that they can swim most effectively. Secondly, there are multiple factors that affect a good arm recovery. The height of the arms, the width of the arms, especially in terms of the entry, and finally the position of the finish of the arms, whether it's happening early, whether it's happening later. And so these factors all matter and they all interact. And so swimmers are trying to find the best combination of all three that results in the most speed for the least effort. And lastly, the nuance, the multiple factors, they all interact on an individual level. Different limb lengths for the swimmers, different amounts of strength, different amounts of range of motion in all the joints in the upper body. Optimal is going to be different for different swimmers, and it has to be discovered because we can't necessarily know exactly what it's going to be, but we have to help swimmers figure out what's going to be the best strategy for them. And once they can figure that out, that is what's going to allow them to go faster for less effort. So when it comes to solutions, it's all about solving those challenges. So when it comes to solutions, it's all about overcoming those challenges. In particular, we have to help swimmers become more aware, and we have to help them feel the different options that they have for recovering the arms, and then become more aware of which options are going to create the most speed and the least effort. And so we have to provide them with a lot of different tools, a lot of different strategies, put them in a lot of different positions, and that's going to give them the awareness that they need in order to figure out how they should recover their arms in order to create speed. So rather than giving them the answer, we have to give them the right problems so that they can find the right answer. So more than anything else, variation is going to be our friend. Variation creates a different feel, and it shows them a new opportunity, a new option for recovering the arm. If they can feel the recoveries in new ways, they can start to feel which type of recovery, which way to recover the arms is going to be fastest and least effortful. And by asking for different variation, rather than just asking them to move their hands an inch to the left or an inch to the right or an inch higher or an inch lower, we can break them out of their current patterns and make them do something really different. And it's when they have the ability to do things very different and they can feel those differences, that's when they can gain the awareness that they need to start to figure out what solution is going to work best for them. The big picture concept is to provide them with a lot of options through a lot of different variation and let them choose the right solution that's going to help them, again, create the most speed for the least amount of effort. So here are some different ways that you can vary the recoveries to accomplish that goal. You can change the height, so have them recover the arms really high as they can, try to reach for the ceiling. You can have them recover the arms really low. Have them literally try to drag their arms through the water at one extreme and then work in between those extremes. You can vary the width, especially of the entry. You can have them try to enter very narrow. You can try to have them enter extremely wide. And by trying to change their entry, that's going to necessarily change their recovery path. You can also have them change where they finish the pull. So they're trying to finish the stroke really late, trying to finish down by the knees. It's what it's going to feel like to them. Or you can tell them to try to finish the stroke when their hands cross their chest. So by exposing them to the end range extremes, that's going to give them more awareness of the different possibilities, the different options. It's going to help them better feel that. And when they become more aware, when they can start to feel it, then they can start to figure out where within that range they're going to be more effective. If they've never recovered the arms high or they've never recovered the arms really low, they don't really even appreciate what that is as an option. So we have to expose them to it to help them feel that and understand it. Now, within those different variations, we can vary them. And so we can have progressions. So we can have swimmers move from a high recovery to a low recovery, and we can have them do that over the course of a lap. So for instance, 425s, start high, finish low, or start low, finish high, or they can go odds high to low, evens low to high. That would be progression within a lap. And then you can also have them progress across repetitions. So maybe it's 625s. First one starts really high, second one's medium, third one's really low, fourth one's really low again, fifth one is medium, sixth one's high. So they've progressed across the repetitions. Each repetition's a little bit different. You can also go alternations. So the odds are high, the evens are low. You can even go different arms at the same time. So let's say that they're trying to enter narrow on the left, they're trying to enter wide on the right. And so you're helping them feel, you're helping them make changes, you're helping them do something different. And when they have the ability to make changes, they have the ability to do things differently. Now they can start to control what they're doing, and they can start to explore more effectively. And by asking them to do different things on a repetition to repetition basis, they're going to be exposed to a lot more different options. And more importantly, they're learning the ability to control their arm recoveries. And if they can control it, they can change it. And if they can change it, they can find a better way to recover the arms. And you can add even more variations. You can add butterfly variations. So you can change the breathing pattern. You can have them go with their head up. You can have them do flutter kick instead of dolphin kick. You can combine all three. You can use different training aid variations. So maybe you have them do it with fins. You have them do it with a drag socks. You have them do it with a snorkel. You have them do it with paddles. You know, the list goes on in terms of what you can have them do as well to change what they're feeling and how they're doing it. And just as importantly, you can have different performance variations. You ask them to change the speed, building, descending, hit this time. Same thing with the stroke count. I want you to go 6. I want you to go 876. You can have them do the same thing with the stroke rate. Give them a certain number, ask them to change the stroke rate, ask them to go high, ask them to go low. And what's important here is they're trying to figure out what works. What strategies allow them to go fast? What strategies allow them to take 1 or 2 less strokes? What strategies allow them to go faster at the same stroke rate or go the same speed with a lower stroke rate? And so by giving them different performance variations, we're letting them test to see what works. And by using the training aids and the different butterfly variations, we're allowing them to feel the arm recoveries in different contexts. Again, we're trying to give them as many options, trying to help them feel what's going to be an effective arm recovery so that they can find the solution that works best for them. So here's a set that's geared more towards helping swimmers figure out the optimal height of the recovery. So they're going to go 2 rounds through this. The first piece, they're going to go 225s head up butterfly. The odds are high with the arm recoveries, the evens are low, and then they'll go to 25 butterfly, whatever feels right. Then they'll do the same thing with flutter kick, and then they'll do the same thing with regular butterfly. And after each 2, again, they're just going to see what feels good and just try to feel it out. Then the second half, rather than going odds and evens, high and low, they're going to progress from high to low on the odds. And on the evens, they're going to progress from low to high. So we're letting them feel the same idea, the same things in a little bit different way. And again, after each pair of 2, they have a regular 25 butterfly to just feel it out and see what feels good. So we're exposing them to a lot of different things here, and we're giving them a chance to put it all together with regular butterfly. And by doing that, they're going to have more awareness of what type of recovery, what height of recovery is going to work best for them. This set, we're going to focus more on the finish of the recovery. So they're going to go 450s butterfly with fins. They're going to go 25 early finish, 25 late finish, and then 25 late finish, 25 early finish. Then number 3, they're going to start with late, progress to early. And number 4, they're going to start with early and progress to late. Then they're going to go 425s butterfly, solid, effortless recoveries, just kind of letting it feel it. And the focus here is on exiting the water in a way that allows them to recover the arms as easily as possible. We'll start off with 25 seconds rest and then drop the interval 5 seconds each round. That's going to create more fatigue. It's going to be harder to stay effortless. It's going to be harder to continue to execute. But that's the challenge here is they got to figure out, all right, how can I still make this happen? Well, I've got a little bit more fatigue. So here, we're trying to really work on letting the arms swing over the surface as easily as possible. And we're helping them figure out the best way to do that by changing how far back they're pulling with each stroke. Last set is more of a speed set, and we're going to focus on the width of the entry following the arm recovery. And all these repetitions are done as fast as possible at a given stroke rate. So the first round's at 1.35 seconds per cycle, then 1.25, and then 1.15. So pretty fast, but not crazy fast. And then on the first one, they're going to start with a narrow entry and move wide. The next one, they're going to start wide and get narrow. And then on the next one, they're going to go wide with the right arm, narrow with the left. And so it's going to be shifted over to the side, and they're going to go to the opposite side on the fourth one, and then they're going to go odd and even, wide and narrow on the fifth and sixth, and then they're just going to go fast on the last one. So we're challenging them to enter differently, and we're challenging them to go fast at a given stroke rate, so they're going to have to figure out how to make that all happen at high speeds. And the challenge of that is going to help them explore. It's going to help them figure out how do they actually recover the arms as effectively and as effortlessly as possible and get in a position to create an effective pull each and every stroke. And so that's the challenge that we're trying to work on. And rather than just telling them what to do, we're putting them in positions where they got to figure out all these different positions, and they have to figure out how to create speed at all those different positions, and they have to do it at a set stroke rate. So it's a pretty big challenge, but once swimmers can execute that effectively, they're going to have a much better understanding of how they need to recover the arms in order to create speed, and that is what it's all about. If you want to learn more about how to help swimmers improve their pull once the arms do recover and enter the water, check out the video below.